Chapter 971. Slowly letting out a breath, Demon Flower Emperor lowered his hands and looked at Su King's group. I've already shown you the demonic human village. It is not a place of filth. Can you leave my chaotic demon ocean now? Hee. Battle Sky Elephant Emperor chuckled. As you said, the demonic human village is indeed not what we imagined. However, the threat your clan poses to Elysium is not small either. Sky Illusion King has already stated the purpose of coming here. One is to investigate the demonic human village, and the other is for your clan to submit to our control. Demon Flower Emperor, you're a smart person. You should know what choice you'll make. Sky Illusion King reminded Demon Flower Emperor. Demon Flower Emperor's face turned cold. What if I say no? You'd better not say no. Your choice will decide the life and death of the demonic human race. We have nearly 200 life and death kings on our side. Even if only a third of us stand out, it'll be enough to sweep through the entire chaotic demon ocean and flatten the entire demonic human race. Jail King said coldly. Ridiculous. Demon Flower Emperor sneered. From ancient times until now, there has never been a movement to exterminate the demonic human clan. In this era, Elysium is in a weakened state, and you're forcing my clan instead. If those titled monarchs of ancient times were to come back to life, they would definitely be angered to death by your actions. Saying so much is useless. What the titled monarchs of ancient times would not do, I will do in this era. I believe they will approve of my actions. Su King's eyelids drooped as he said indifferently. Su King, although you're the #1 expert here, it's not that I, Demon Flower Emperor, am looking down on you, but you'll never be worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as the titled monarchs of ancient times. Cut the crap. Demon Flower Emperor, you managed to escape last time in the Blood Sky continent. Let's see how you're going to escape this time. Last time, the Demon Flower Emperor and Xianhou had come to Blood Sky continent to attack Terminator Demon Sect, which made Zhan Tianxiang Emperor lose a lot of face. He had long since wanted to give the Demon Flower Emperor a taste of bitterness. However, he also knew that with his speed, he couldn't catch up to the Demon Flower Emperor. This was an opportunity. With the demonic human clan as a hindrance, and nearly 200 life and death kings present, the Demon Flower Emperor couldn't leave, nor could he. From a few miles away, the Zhan Tianxiang Emperor threw a punch at the Demon Flower Emperor. The tyrannical fist force filled the entire world, and the force was overflowing. Battle Celestial Elephant Emperor. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. The Demon Flower Emperor let out a delicate shout and slapped out with her palm to meet Zhan Tianxiang Emperor's attack. Boom, boom, boom. Both of them were well-known figures among titled monarchs. As soon as they exchanged blows, an aura that seemed to be able to destroy everything appeared. The space constantly shattered and shattered like a mirror. Puff! All of a sudden, the Demon Flower Emperor's face paled, and he spurted out a small mouthful of blood. Demon Flower Emperor, you're only a so-so. The Zhan Tianxiang Emperor became more and more valiant. A powerful aura coiled around his body, emitting an ancient battle elephant trumpeting sound. The Demon Flower Emperor's strength has decreased. Xianhou saw some clues. Among the crowd, Five Poison King revealed a sneer. The Demon Flower Emperor had been poisoned by his Rong Yuan poison, and it was impossible to expel it. The only way was to seal the majority of his cultivation base and temporarily seal the poison. However, this way, his battle power wouldn't be able to reach its peak without his cultivation base being at its peak. It would be good if he could reach 80 or 90%. In this world, aside from the Spirit Dan King, no one can cure the Rong Yuan poison. Five Poison King crossed his arms in front of his chest and watched the battle. When the Demon Flower Emperor was at her peak, the Zhan Tianxiang Emperor was on par with her. Now that her strength had decreased, it was naturally difficult for her to resist the Zhan Tianxiang Emperor's violent attacks. She retreated step by step, and her face became paler and paler. Demon Flower Emperor, lose for me. The Zhan Tianxiang Emperor let out a long roar and leaped up, directly attacking the Demon Flower Emperor's face with a domineering fist aura. Gotcha! The demon flower emperor's arms in front of her chest made a bone-cracking sound, and she was sent flying. If it wasn't for her immortal body, this blow was enough to make her lose her battle power. Zhan Tianxiang Emperor, I'll fight with you. Xianhou suddenly moved, wanting to stop the unforgiving Zhan Tianxiang Emperor. Yin Qingxian, you should go back. Not far away from Su King, the Air Emperor's figure flashed, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of Xianhou, sending Xianhou flying with a punch. In terms of space profound, he was not inferior to Xianhou, and in terms of foundation, he was superior to Xianhou. Fight with them. Seeing that the Demon Flower Emperor was injured, the Cassiopeia King and the other kings of the demonic human clan were furious, and they rushed forward. Mantis trying to stop a chariot, overestimating themselves. The Sky Ethereal King sneered and said, "Everyone, since the demonic human clan is so stubborn, then there is no need for us to be polite. Today, we must eliminate the hidden danger of Elysium, so that we can use all our strength to deal with the catastrophe of the foreign races and leave a bright world for our descendants." Sky Ethereal King is right. We have given the demonic human clan a choice, but they are not willing to accept it. Kill. Those who did not come were either hesitant or had other reasons. Of those who came, 80 to 90% were the radicals who wanted to eliminate the demonic human clan. Almost 90% of them stood up, ready to bathe the demonic human clan in blood. A great war was about to begin. AI. Xianhou sighed, turned around, and said to the people she had brought, "I will stay to help the demonic human clan. If you're not willing to help, you can leave. I will not blame you. Xianhou, don't worry. Since I've come with you, I will not choose to leave. They have gone too far." The Demon Flower Emperor has already taken a step back, summoning the demonic land where the demon ancestral tree is sealed, violating the ancestors' will, but they still won't let the demonic human clan go. They should be punished. That's right. What has the demonic human clan done wrong? Just because they have the bloodline of the demons, they must be eliminated? Earth Yuan King, may only be a high-level monarch, but I will not stand by and do nothing. Back then, Dragon King and Xianhou were the representatives who wanted to protect the demonic human clan. Many people followed them. Although Su King and the others were strong, some didn't follow them due to various reasons. But there were still a few who came without any hesitation. Among them, none of them were monarchs, but they were all hot-blooded. If you want to destroy the demonic human clan, you will have to ask me, the innate demon emperor, first. In the distance, a group of people suddenly came over. The person in the lead had broad shoulders and a tall body. He wore a dark silver robe, and the demonic energy ripples that his body emitted were quite similar to the Demon Flower Emperor's. But there were also some differences. It was clearly more berserk. It is the Blood Heaven Land's clan master, the innate demon emperor. Someone shouted. In true spirit world, there were many demonic human clans, but the two largest ones were the Chaotic Demon Ocean's demonic human clan and the Blood Sky Continent's demonic human clan. The patriarch of the Chaotic Demon Ocean's demonic human clan was the Demonic Flower Emperor, while the patriarch of the Blood Sky Continent's demonic human clan was the Innate Demon Emperor. Innate Demon Emperor didn't have the perfect demonic human bloodline, but he had mastered the complete demonic transformation. At the life and death realm, he could also possess demonic power after the transformation. In terms of strength, Innate Demon Emperor wasn't much weaker than the Demon Flower Emperor. Originally, Su King and the others planned to take control of the Chaotic Demon Ocean's demonic human clan first, then go to Blood Heaven Land and take control of the Blood Heaven Land's demonic human clan. Unexpectedly, Innate Demon Emperor had already received the news and brought all the monarchs of his clan. Behind Innate Demon Emperor, there were more than 10 demonic human kings, similar to those in the Chaotic Demon Ocean. They all had the same hatred for the demonic human clan, and their eyes were filled with unflinching fear. The Blood Heaven Land's bloodline is here. Cassiopeia King's face lit up. Although they only had 40 to 50 monarchs with the addition of the Blood Heaven Land's bloodline, which was still far inferior to the monarchs on Su King's side, at least their strength had increased by a lot. They're all here? Fine, let's deal with them all at once. Su King's expression didn't change as he said indifferently, Demon Flower Emperor, this should be the first time we fight side by side, right? Innate Demon Emperor said to the weak Demon Flower Emperor. Demon Flower Emperor nodded. Yes, I hope it's not the last time. Whether it's the last time or not, Innate Demon Emperor, will fight until the end. Innate Demon Emperor's gaze swept across everyone on Su King's side, and his demonic power surged again. His aura turned the space blurry, and his figure became indistinct like a black shadow. Innate Demon Emperor, I didn't expect the cowardly you to also come. The reason why Zhan Tianxiang Emperor mocked Innate Demon Emperor as a cowardly mouse was because the demonic human race was the weakest in Bloodheaven Land. Both the human race and the demonic race were above the demonic human race, and the demonic race was the overlord of Bloodheaven Land. Innate Demon Emperor usually kept a low profile, and it was rare to see him come out. Is that so? Innate Demon Emperor didn't reply, as if he didn't want to explain. With the arrival of Innate Demon Emperor, the atmosphere above Chaotic Demon Ocean became even more intense. Countless killing intents interweaved together, and it was 100 times colder than winter. Ordinary Sea of Soul Realm experts simply couldn't survive here. This was the battlefield of kings, and only kings had the qualifications to interfere. In the end, everyone's gaze fell on Su King. There were many titled monarchs present, but in terms of influence and strength, Su King was naturally the leader. His attitude could sway many people. As long as he made a move, this battle would be unavoidable. However, most people knew that Su King's attitude had already been made clear. Yin Qingxian, I'll give you one more chance. Leave his place, Su King said to Xinhou. Xinhou shook her head. Kill. Shifting his gaze away from the mysterious queen, the illusionary emperor said emotionlessly, Kill. As soon as Su King opened his mouth, the atmosphere in the sky flared up. It was as if a titan steel wire had snapped. The majority of people started circulating their Zhen Yuan or demonic power, and a king's aura soared into the sky. Who dares to kill? Just at this moment, a thunderous roar resounded from afar. That shocking aura was like a peerless, treasured sword, mercilessly piercing through the atmosphere, causing everyone to subconsciously want to dodge, as if they didn't dodge, they would be killed by that sword. Yi Chun had arrived. Chapter 972. Yi Chun. It's Yi Chun. Sure enough, he came. Nobody dared to look down on the most dazzling genius of this era, a sword Dao genius. Not long after entering life and death realm, he dared to challenge Demon Emperor and killed 3 titled monarchs, Yellow-Robed Old Monster, Blackwater Ancestor, and Redwater Ancestor. Who would dare to look down on him? Given enough time, he would definitely surpass the ancient Sword King and become a #1 Sword Dao expert since ancient times. Yi Chun. A faint smile appeared on Demon Flower Emperor's face. She knew that the other party wouldn't go back on his words. No matter how powerful the enemy was, he would still rush over without any hesitation. Sword artists were proud, and Yi Chun was a noble among sword artists. This sword aura. He's made another breakthrough. Sword aura was different from sword intent. Although sword aura was a transition period for sword intent, sword aura would grow stronger as one's strength grew. It was unlike sword intent, which was extremely pure and couldn't tolerate anything else. Judging from this sword aura that could pierce through the sky, Yi Chun's strength had undoubtedly increased again. Even she couldn't see through it. He's the Yi Chun that Kuang Zun spoke of. Innate Demon Emperor was the patriarch of Blood Sky Continent's demonic human clan. The clan's genius, Tai Kuangzuan, had once told him about Yi Chun's deeds. Demon Flower Emperor has made a good ally. Innate Demon Emperor could sense the unruly and willpower of this sword aura. The newcomer was precisely Yi Chun. However, he didn't come alone. Behind him were a large number of life and death kings. Tantai Clan's Moon Empress, Bai Clan's Patriarch, Dugu Clan's Patriarch, Blood Sky Continent's Demonic Blade Sex Patriarch, Demonic Blade King, as well as Pill King Island's Patriarch, Spirit Pill King. All of them were famous kings. adding the kings of their clans and sects, as well as some solitary kings. The total number had already exceeded 30. Spirit Pill King. Su King frowned. Yi Chen's arrival was within his expectations, but the appearance of the Spirit Pill King surprised him. The Spirit Pill King might not be strong, but the status of the Spirit Pill King Island in Elysium was extraordinary. Even Su King wasn't willing to be enemies with the Spirit Pill King Island. The Spirit Dan King smiled and said, "My grandson is Yi Chen's eldest disciple. This time, he came to see the scenery with Yi Chen." Hearing this, everyone curled their lips. Enjoy the scenery? What scenery was there to enjoy here? They had probably already boarded Yi Chen's warship and become Yi Chen's allies. "I'm late." Yi Chen looked at the Demon Flower Emperor and Xianhou. Not long after he returned to the Yi family, he found out from a secret channel that Su King and the rest had gathered a large number of kings to go to chaotic Demon Ocean. There was no time for him to slowly recover his Zhen Yuan. Therefore, he refined all the Zhen Yuan crystals he had obtained from the Devouring Island, temporarily recovering his cultivation base to 60 to 70%. Then, he started to contact kings who were interested in befriending him. Perhaps because of his great reputation, everyone had confidence in his future, and the majority of people were willing to follow him. In a short period of time, he had gathered more than 30 kings and rushed over without stopping. A bit later would have been troublesome, but now is the time. The Demon Flower Emperor let out a sigh of relief. Adding the people brought by Yi Chen, they had 80 to 90 people on their side. Although it was still less than half of the opponents, they at least had the strength to fight back. "Yi Chen, you are my disciple Sikong Sheng's heart devil. As his master, I come to ask for some advice today. I want to see what kind of mysteries you have." The Evil King flew out. The Evil King was a king on the same level as Xianhou, Hell King, and Dragon King. Currently, he was also a titled monarch. Judging from his aura, he seemed to be even stronger than Hell King. As for Sikong Sheng, he had already become Evil King's disciple a few years ago. "Evil King, you are not my opponent." Hearing the name Sikong Sheng, Yi Chen's expression didn't change in the slightest. As far as he was concerned, this name was a very old memory, belonging to the past. Arrogant. When had the Evil King ever been looked down upon? Moreover, it was a rookie like Yi Chen. Evil God Claw. The Evil King's weapon was a pair of claws, blue and gold in color. Spreading his 5 fingers, he clawed at Yi Chen. The sinister claws tore the space apart, exuding an evil chi. Clang! Facing the furious attack of the Evil King, Yi Chen only pulled out the sky's Scorpio sword and swung it horizontally, precisely blocking the claws. Instantly, a light blue flame exploded. Yi Chen didn't move an inch, while the Evil King's body swayed slightly, his footsteps becoming unsteady. Yi Chen's sword arts had already reached the level of controlling the sword with his heart, and there were no flaws to speak of. A casual sword strike had already cut through the weak point of the Evil King's attack. The Evil King was slightly startled. Closing his left hand into a beak shape, he suddenly pecked at Yi Chen's temple. This move was called Evil Bird Sun Strike, and if hit, one's head would definitely explode. Yi Chen didn't dodge. Instead, the power on the Sky Scorpio sword increased by 30%, slightly bending like a drawn bow. In the next second, the Sky Scorpio sword straightened, and the sword energy exploded, bouncing the Evil King away. The beak-shaped light merely flashed in front of Yi Chen's body, not even touching his protective Zhen Yuan. "Evil King, you're far from being my opponent." Yi Chen shook his head. The Evil King was only slightly stronger than the Jail King, and even the Jail King couldn't withstand one move from Yi Chen, not to mention the Evil King. Moreover, Yi Chen's merciless water and fire had already reached completion, and he was no longer a match for ordinary title monarchs. Among everyone here, perhaps only Su King could fight him. Hearing this, the Evil King's face alternated between green and white. In front of so many kings, he was sent flying by Yi Chen's sword, and he didn't even have the qualifications to threaten the latter. This was simply a humiliation. In the crowd, the Jail King was rejoicing in the Evil King's misfortune. He and the evil king weren't on good terms. Although he had also suffered at the hands of Yi Chun, at least it wasn't in front of so many people. But soon after, the jail king felt a chill in his heart. Compared to the previous time, Yi Chun's sword arts seemed to be even more mysterious. Just an ordinary sword move was enough to neutralize the evil king's ultimate move. How could he know that the completion of merciless water and fire had not only given Yi Chun a super sword move, but had also allowed Yi Chun to comprehend the essence of thousands of sword arts from the sword world? This was an increase in one's foundation, and it had the power to turn something rotten into something magical. The evil king flew into a rage out of humiliation. Evil bird seizes the sun. The evil bird seizing the sun was one of the two killing moves of the evil god Claw art. It was several times more powerful than the evil bird attacking the sun. More importantly, this attack was majestic, unlike the evil bird attacking the sun, which was fast and precise. Pouring all of his Zhen Yuan into the claw, the evil king's entire body leaped toward Yi Chun and pecked at him. Screech! A sound sharper than any other ferocious bird rang out. An evil and ferocious bird image spread its wings and flew toward Yi Chun, its claws as sharp as blades. This move has more flaws, but it's more powerful. The sky Scorpio sword spun in the air as Yi Chun stabbed out, piercing the head of the bird image. In the next moment, the bird image's head exploded and its body scattered. The moment the sharp claws touched Yi Chun's protective Zhen Yuan, they disintegrated helplessly and dissipated. Yi Chun, you've lost. Just as the bird image disappeared, the evil king's body arrived. Actually, evil bird seizes the sun was only his cover. The true killing move would come later. Rumble. An even bigger bird appeared out of nowhere, swallowing Yi Chun in one gulp. Evil bird seizes the sun was a move very close to a top-grade profound sense martial skill. Not good. The life and death kings on Yi Chun's side were startled, thinking that Yi Chun had been careless and allowed the evil king to turn the tables. After all, both sides had 5-star battle strength. If one side was careless, it wasn't impossible for the other to turn the tables. Only Xian Ho, Demon Flower Emperor, and innate Demon Emperor knew that things weren't so simple. Evil King, you can be considered as the most brilliant genius of your era. However, your research in martial skills has disappointed me. This is also the biggest reason why you can't compete with Senior Yin. A sword light shot out from the void, piercing through the bird image's body and slashing toward the evil king. The evil king was like a startled grasshopper as he bounced off, wanting to avoid this sword light. However, Yi Chun seemed to have already predicted his dodging path. The sword light turned and pierced through the evil king's body. Void Yuan Chop, Yuan Emperor's ultimate move. Yi Chun had long since seen through it and modified it according to his own style. Although its might wasn't as powerful as the original Void Yuan Chop, its subtlety was not inferior. Pucci! Blood splattered in the sky as the evil king miserably tumbled away. The flesh on his chest wriggled and quickly recovered. However, he had lost at least a third of his cultivation base. This sword had the power to destroy everything. Enough! Su King stopped the unwilling evil king and said indifferently, "Now is not the time to ask for advice. What's the point of winning against someone who's about to die?" Humph! The evil king coldly snorted as a sharp light flickered in his eyes. Yi Chun raised his brows and looked at Su King. Su King, no matter who wins or loses in this battle, it will be Elysium's battle strength that will be damaged. Do you think this is necessary? When you killed the yellow-robed old monster and the other two, did you think of this? They wanted to kill me, so their deaths are not to be regretted. However, this is an all-out battle. It's not just 1 or 2 people dying. Su King looked down at Yi Chun. To me, eradicating the demonic human tribe is something I must do. As for losing you guys, it's your own fault. I don't know why the Spirit Pill King wants to help you, but as long as he kills you, I believe he will make the right choice. Sometimes being too much of a genius is not a good thing for Elysium. It might even be a disaster. You've caused too much trouble, and the internal strife of Elysium is also caused by you. Without Yi Chun, Xianhou, and the Demon Flower Emperor wouldn't be so close. If they wanted to control the demonic human tribe, there wouldn't be so many disturbances. They could completely reduce the losses to the minimum. Huh? Yi Chen laughed. Su King, do you think I'm afraid of you? Isn't that so? Otherwise, there's no need for you to say so much to me. All right, I want to see how capable the famous Su King is. My point of view is the same as yours. As long as I defeat you, this battle will be over. Although they were at a disadvantage in numbers, Yi Chen wasn't afraid at all. Since the other side wanted to cause trouble, he would accompany them. At this moment, it was time to change the situation in Elysium. They couldn't let this group of people dominate Elysium. Chapter 973. Senior Demon Flower Emperor, come here. Yi Chen suddenly said to the Demon Flower Emperor. The Demon Flower Emperor was confused, but he still flew over. Yi Chen raised his palm and hit the Demon Flower Emperor's body. At the same time, a transparent energy entered the Demon Flower Emperor's body through Yi Chen's palm. The Demon Flower Emperor subconsciously wanted to resist, but Yi Chen's attack was too fast. Not only was the Demon Flower Emperor shocked, but Yi Chen's people were also shocked. They didn't know what Yi Chen was going to do to the Demon Flower Emperor, but after seeing that the Demon Flower Emperor was fine, they relaxed. It was a false alarm. Perhaps Yi Chen was giving the Demon Flower Emperor some benefits. The Demon Flower Emperor was shocked at first, but then he revealed a smile. Boom! A powerful fluctuation of demonic energy came from the Demon Flower Emperor's body. The Demon Flower Emperor's strength instantly recovered to its peak, and he was no longer weak. Impossible! The five Poison King's eyes widened. If the Demon Flower Emperor recovered to his peak, didn't that mean he had cured the Origin Rome poison? In his view, only a Spirit Pill King could cure the Origin Rome poison, and even with the power of Spirit Pill King, they couldn't cure it directly. Instead, they had to refine an antidote based on the characteristics of the Origin Rome poison. How could Yi Chen easily cure the Origin Rome poison and allow the Demon Flower Emperor to recover to his peak? It's a detoxification technique. The Air Emperor squinted his eyes. A method that didn't require an antidote could be said to be a kind of secret technique that specialized in dispelling poisons. Although he didn't know what kind of poison-dispelling secret technique Yi Chen was practicing, he was sure that it was no small matter. He had a good understanding of the five poisons King's Yuan Rome poison. Even if he was poisoned, it would be difficult for him to completely dispel it. The Air Emperor was right. What Yi Chen was using was indeed a detoxification secret art, which was taught to him by the Yuan Emperor. The detoxification secret art was a heaven-rank, high-rank secret art. It could only be used to save people or save oneself, but it was very useful. The Great Poison Conversion art was very difficult to cultivate, and there were many steps. If one wanted to get started, they had to first learn how to use the Great Poison Conversion art to understand the basic composition of any poison. From the macroscopic to the microscopic, they had to break down the poison. This was because some strange poisons, once broken down, were not very harmful. Finally, he used the Great Poison Dissolving technique to gradually refine it. Of the above 3 steps, one could be considered to have achieved the first step. The other 2 steps would be considered to have achieved the minor accomplishment. After the minor accomplishment, one had to turn the Great Poison Dissolving technique into an instinct. The reason why one had to turn it into an instinct was because some poisons spread very quickly. One had to race against time with it. If one couldn't beat it, then one would naturally lose, and it would be a loss of life. Reaching this step would be considered to have reached the great accomplishment. As for the Great Perfection Realm, it was the most difficult step. When the Great Poison Dissolving technique reached the Great Perfection Realm, the body would produce an incomparably wonderful detoxification energy. This detoxification energy had spirituality, and it had already merged with one's instinct. Most poisons that came into contact with it would immediately be broken down and refined, as if they had met their nemesis. What Yi Chen injected into the Demon Flower Emperor's body was the detoxification energy. Naturally, Yi Chen's Great Poison Dissolving technique had already reached the Great Perfection Realm. Most poisons that came into contact with the detoxification energy would immediately be broken down and refined. Although the Yuan Rong poison was considered a very powerful poison, when it came into contact with the detoxification energy, it was easily dissolved as if it had met its nemesis. Battle Elephant Emperor. Didn't want to fight with me? Come. The Demon Flower Emperor's battle strength had recovered to its peak, and his aura was like a rainbow. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Battle Elephant Emperor's eyes were filled with intense battle intent. Only by defeating the Demon Flower Emperor at his peak would he feel a sense of accomplishment. Otherwise, it would be too boring. Air Emperor, your opponent is me. Xianhou knew that the time for the final battle had arrived. Although she wasn't confident in defeating the Air Emperor, it would be more dangerous for the others to deal with the Air Emperor, who was proficient in space. I'll fulfill your wish, the Air Emperor said calmly. Haha, since there are no veteran title monarchs, Hell King, Evil King, you two new title monarchs will be my opponents. There were too few title monarchs that supported the demonic humans. The innate Demon Emperor was filled with pride, and he wanted to fight against the Hell King and Evil King alone. Although he wasn't confident in defeating the two, he was confident that he could hold them back for some time. Innate Demon Emperor, it seems like you want to die. Hell King sneered coldly. He might not be able to defeat Yi Chun, but other than Yi Chun, he wasn't afraid even if it was Xianhou or the Demon Flower Emperor. Innate Demon Emperor, you will be the first titled monarchs to die. Evil King had nowhere to vent his anger. The arrogance of the innate Demon Emperor had undoubtedly enraged him. They should be able to hold on for some time. Thoughts flashed across Yi Chen's mind. He didn't have to worry about Senior Demon Flower Emperor fighting against Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor and Senior Xianhou Yin fighting against the Air Emperor. Although it seemed a little difficult, he knew that Xianhou cultivated a profound Tao that couldn't be judged by common sense. She often had a way to turn the situation around. As for the innate Demon Emperor fighting against the Hell King and Evil King alone, it was too much for him. After all, the two of them were close to 5-star high tier. However, Yi Chun believed that the innate Demon Emperor could hold on for some time. Leave the rest of the titled monarchs to me. Other than Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor, Air Emperor, Hell King, and Evil King, there were still a few title monarchs on Su King's side. Needless to say, there was also Su King, one of the two sword monarchs, Azure Cloud Sword Monarch, Blood Sky Continent's 9-headed serpent monarch, Black Dragon Grand Ancestor, who dominated the Eastern Deep Sea, and together with Su King, there were 4 titled monarchs. None of them were to be trifled with. Even the weakest, the 9-headed serpent monarch, had a mid-tier 5-star battle prowess. The Azure Cloud Sword Monarch and Black Dragon Grand Ancestor were no weaker than the Air Emperor. Especially Su King, before he obtained the Violent Tiger Dragon Inner Pellet. He was already at the peak of 5-star battle prowess. No one knew what was going through Yi Chen's mind, or else they would all be shocked and dumbfounded. After all, to them, Yi Chen was barely able to deal with Su King. At most, he could barely contend with Su King. If he were to go against the other 3 titled monarchs, he would be courting death like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It wasn't that Xianhou and the others didn't want to fight 1 or 2 more titled monarchs, but with their current prowess, it was too difficult for them to do so. After all, the Air Emperor and Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor weren't on the same level as Hell King and Evil King. They could only fight 1-on-1, not 2. On Yi Chen's side, other than Yi Chen himself, not even Xianhou and Demon Flower Emperor dare to say that they could defeat Hell King and Evil King together. Innate Demon Emperor chose the 2 of them because he wanted to hold them back for a while, lessening the pressure on the others. With another innate Demon Emperor, he could only run away unless he fought with his life on the line. Since you all have opponents, I have no choice but to deal with these demonic human kings. Black Dragon Old Ancestor sneered coldly. He looked at Cassiopeia King and the other demonic human kings with emotionless eyes, only murderous intent. Red-eyed black dragons were violent beasts to begin with. Black Dragon Old Ancestor, this battle doesn't have to last for so long. Let me help you. Let's finish it quickly. Nine-headed snake emperor stood beside black dragon old ancestor. All right, black dragon old ancestor didn't decline. In the end, only azure cloud sword emperor was left. No one knew what he was thinking, but no one was in the mood to think about it. Judging from the situation, whether it was the number of ordinary monarchs or titled monarchs, Su King's side had the absolute advantage. It was an unequal battle. The atmosphere between Su King and Yi Chun was the most tense. They were the core of their respective camps. Once they started fighting, it would be the fuse of an all-out war. 10 moves, I'll defeat you. The illusionary emperor made his move. He slowly drew his hands out from behind his back. Before, I was a small figure, so I admired you a lot. But now, I know that a titled monarch is nothing more than a mortal. Arrogance, ignorance, these are all the same to you. Come, Yi Chun, want to see how you'll defeat me in 10 moves. Unexpectedly, Yi Chun sheathed the sky's Scorpio sword. At the same time, he took out a pseudo-extreme grade sword from his storage ring. This sword was silver with a hint of blue, with a blood-red mark in the middle. This was the only pseudo-extreme grade sword that Yi Chun had forged before, called Iron Blood Silver Blue Sword. Extreme grade swords were too hard to forge, but Yi Chun had already grasped the ability to forge pseudo-extreme grade swords, although the success rate was not high. Abandoning the extreme grade sword? Everyone was a bit baffled. Shinho seemed to have vaguely guessed something. A complicated expression flickered in her eyes, followed by admiration. It was an admiration for a true expert, just like how she admired Dragon King. Although Dragon King was not as powerful as Su King and Air Emperor, he was a true expert. She had never thought that she would admire Yi Chun so early. This was a young man who was half her age. What kind of environment and what kind of training could forge such a peerless sword artist? A peerless sword artist, a symbol of strength, a symbol of spirit. First move, Su King was wearing a bright yellow robe, flickering with yellow light. He was like a jumping sun, ignoring the distance of space and the bindings of heaven and earth. With a flicker, he arrived before Yi Chun and stretched out his right hand, which seemed to be forged from gold, striking at Yi Chun's face. Su King had made his move. The atmosphere was shattered. A horrifying aura soared into the sky and swept into the starry sky. A sword intent that could destroy everything burst out from Yi Chun. At this moment, Yi Chun was like a peerless sword that was unsheathed, releasing a cold light that could pierce through the starry sky. Clang! The iron-blooded silver-blue sword streaked across the sky, also ignoring the distance of space and the bindings of heaven and earth. It clashed with Su King's palm at even faster speed. Boom! Berserk chi waves tore apart space one after another. Yi Chun and Void Emperor's figures flickered, directly ignoring the harsh environment as they continued to exchange blows. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of blows. Their flickering figures gave off a decisive feeling. Kill! Everyone fought fiercely. Demon Flower Emperor against Celestial Elephant Emperor, Shinho against Air Emperor, Innate Demon Emperor against Jail King and Evil King. As for Black Dragon Patriarch and Hydra Emperor, they smirked and charged at Cassiopeia King and the others. Your opponent is also me. All of a sudden, a sword aura that could destroy everything swept over, engulfing Black Dragon Patriarch and Hydra Emperor. 8 trigrams annihilation sword art. All the figures in the battle stopped almost at the same time. The one who made the move was actually Yi Chun. He actually planned to deal with Black Dragon Patriarch and Hydra Emperor at the same time when he was fighting with Su King. What kind of confidence and imposing manner did he have? Haha. Yi Chun, came to this world under the blessing of fate. In the past, it was just a small fight. Today, let me fight the 4 great monarchs alone. Yi Chun laughed loudly. The ostentatious sword aura expanded uncontrollably, engulfing the azure cloud sword emperor and causing the void to tremble. Not only Yi Chun's side, but the way everyone looked at Yi Chun changed. At this moment, Yi Chun seemed to be glowing in their eyes. They couldn't see his face clearly, only his soaring sword aura and fluttering black hair. Chapter 974. Yi Chun, you are too arrogant. The Black Dragon Old Ancestor was enraged. Yi Chun was fighting against Su King, but he still wanted to kill him and the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor at the same time. Did he think that he could kill the Black Dragon Old Ancestor and the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor by himself? This was the first time that the Black Dragon Old Ancestor was looked down upon to such an extent. He was extremely furious. The Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor's reaction wasn't as intense as the Black Dragon Old Ancestor, but he also felt that Yi Chun was a little too arrogant. He wanted to fight against 4 titled monarchs by himself. This was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Not to mention the others, just Su King alone was enough to suppress Yi Chun, not to mention the 4 of them. Yi Chun, I thought you were a genius. It turns out that you are just an arrogant person who has been blinded by success. The Azure Cloud Sword Emperor's expression was very cold. Divine light shot out from his eyes. Chi 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 chi. The 8 trigrams extermination sword art was one of Yi Chun's strongest sword arts apart from the merciless water and fire art. It was comparable to the autumn water sword art's 3rd move, Bone Break. Once it was used, countless sword lights formed an 8 trigrams diagram. It swept out and covered the 2 titled monarchs, the Black Dragon Old Ancestor and the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor. The Black Dragon Old Ancestor and the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor shouted together. The Black Dragon Old Ancestor's black robe fluttered even though there was no wind. He suddenly punched out, creating a huge gap in the sword lights. A dragon's roar resounded through the heaven and earth. Behind the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor, the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor's shadow condensed. The 9 heads either spewed out flames, frost, or meteor-like attacks towards the incoming sword lights. Each of the 9 attacks was enough to severely injure an ordinary titled monarch. One person was equivalent to 9 ordinary titled monarchs. However, the 8 trigrams extermination sword art wasn't so simple. The 8 trigrams contained yin and yang, reversing the heaven and earth. The sword formation only changed slightly, and the lost sword lights condensed again, rushing towards the 2 again. This Yi Chun, innate demon emperor, thought that he was arrogant enough to fight against the Hell King and Evil King alone, but little did he expect that Yi Chun was even more arrogant than him. He fought against 4 monarchs alone, and among the 4 monarchs, other than the Nine-Headed Serpent Sovereign, the other 3 were stronger than the Hell King and Evil King. No matter what, today's battle is enough to make Yi Chun's name resound throughout the world. In terms of fame, his fame might even surpass that of Su King and those veteran title monarchs who have lived for hundreds of years. Everyone thought to themselves. Multitasking, Yi Chun controlled the 8 trigrams sword formation to attack the Black Dragon Old Ancestor and the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor while he held the iron-blooded silver-blue sword and fought against Su King. This kind of multitasking had already surpassed the ordinary multitasking. This was because it was different from using dual swords. Dual swords required one to hold a sword in each hand and use different sword arts. Right now, he was using sword arts while using his soul power to control the 8 trigram sword array. The difficulty had increased by several times. It couldn't be compared to before. Great Destruction Golden Burning Palm. The surreal Emperor's expression was as cold as 10,000 years old ice. He didn't say anything, but his attacks became several times fiercer. He threw out a palm attack, and his palm was like a burning iron. Wherever his palm hit, there would be a clanging sound and dazzling sparks. This was the terrifying effect that could only be created by combining the metal profound and fire profound to a certain degree. Chi, chi, chi. The sword light danced and refracted in the void. Yi Chun's figure was like a ghost, flickering and shifting. The sword law he used came from Yuan Emperor's Void Essence Slash. Void Essence Slash contained the space profound, which was much stronger than the Orbit Slash. After all, Yuan Emperor was a peak 7-star expert. The space profound martial arts that he had researched were not something that Yi Chun could compete with. If Yi Chun hadn't comprehended the essence of thousands of sword arts from the sword world, he might not have been able to use the Void Essence Slash. Although the golden flame palm shadow was as fast as light, it didn't have many variations. In comparison, the Void Essence Slash was not only faster, but also had more variations. Sometimes it attacked in a straight line, sometimes it refracted in the air, and sometimes it curved forward. In the hands of Yi Chun, the style of the Void Essence Slash was completely different from that of Yuan Emperor. After all, Yuan Emperor wasn't a swordsman, so his fighting style was somewhat different. The refracted sword light lingered around Yi Chun's body, protecting Yi Chun tightly. From time to time, several sword lights would shoot out and attack Su King's body. Demon Flower, pervasive entanglement. Apart from Yi Chun's side, there were battles everywhere. Among them, the battle between the Demon Flower Emperor and Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor was the most direct and violent. Both of them were fighting head-on and didn't have many variations. There were only naked attacks. The Demon Flower Emperor's hands quickly formed seals, and a huge demon flower condensed below her, holding her up. The roots of the demon flower extended out dark green vines that were like giant pythons and wrapped around Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor. These vines were densely covered with barbs. Once entangled, one could imagine the consequences. 8 Desolation, Heaven Warring, Saint Technique. Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor was a physique-refining king, and head-on battles were his forte. It was no exaggeration to say that although his battle prowess was at the advanced 5-star level, he could even fight against a peak 5-star king. In the past, the Golden Turtle Great Ancestor was stronger than him, but he only sent him flying with a slap and didn't do much to him. It was imaginable how strong his head-on battle power was. The Demon Flower Emperor knew his strength, so she didn't dare to fight 1 against 2 at the same time. She knew that in order to reduce the burden of others, she must first not be a burden. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of air soared into the sky, and Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor's body expanded, reaching a height of 6 meters, like a giant. At the same time, his appearance began to change from human to beast-man. This was his strongest form. As a physique-refining king, strength alone was not enough. Speed was necessary. Transforming into his original form would increase his strength, but his speed and agility would undoubtedly decrease. After all, he was different from the Golden Turtle Great Ancestor. The Golden Turtle Great Ancestor didn't walk the path of physique refining. The reason why his physical defense was so strong was because of the natural advantage of the Golden Turtle Great Ancestor. Haha, a mere little snake dares to be so insolent in front of me. Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor laughed loudly. He grabbed the entangling vines with each hand and pulled forcefully. The vines straightened and pulled the Demon Flower Emperor and the Demon Flower below her over. Whip him! The Demon Flower Emperor's expression didn't change. Waves of demonic power were poured into the Demon Flower. Suddenly, the Demon Flower emitted a dazzling black brilliance. The giant python vines seemed to be on steroids as they shook violently and lashed at the 6-meter-tall Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor. The sound of them breaking through the air almost pierced through people's eardrums. There were too many giant python vines. There were dozens and hundreds of them attacking at the same time. Even the Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor couldn't block them all. In the blink of an eye, he was immediately whipped dozens of times. The treasured clothes on his body were torn apart, revealing the supreme-grade treasured armor inside and the thick veined arms. Looking down at his unprotected arms, there were faint red marks on them. These were marks left behind by the vines. The Battle Sky Elephant Emperor grinned and suddenly punched out. The violent fist energy crushed the space and shattered all the vines in front of it, heading straight for the demonic flower queen. The Demon Flower Emperor finally understood the Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor's defense. It was not weaker than the Golden Turtle Great Ancestor. The vines whipped over and seemed to leave faint red marks on the Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor's arms, but the barbs didn't pierce through at all. They all collapsed as if these barbs were made of tofu. Seeing the Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor's punch, the demonic power outside the Demon Flower Emperor's body rapidly thickened. At the same time, the huge demon flower below changed from an open state to a closed state, wrapping the demon flower emperor inside. Rumble. There were dozens of layers of petals on the demon flower. With a loud explosion, dozens of layers of the demon flower were broken in one fell swoop, exposing the demon flower emperor inside. Go! The demon flower emperor held a huge demonic light ball in his hand. This demonic light ball was the energy absorbed in the battle and converted into demonic power. The demon flower emperor's strength lay in the fact that the more he fought, the more powerful he became. The Zhantian elephant emperor also knew this, so he immediately crossed his arms and sealed his chest and face. If the battle between the demon flower emperor and the Zhantian elephant emperor was violent and direct, then the battle between Xianhou and the air emperor was elusive and unpredictable. Both of them were experts proficient in the profound meaning of space. When they fought, they would inevitably use the profound meaning of space to dodge and attack. Occasionally, they would also use other profound meaning martial arts as support. Swish! Xianhou took a step into the spatial door, which quickly closed and disappeared into the void. The next moment, the air emperor blasted a punch over, shattering the space. When she reappeared, Xianhou was already at another angle. However, the air emperor seemed to have captured Xuanhou's fluctuations. His figure flickered and appeared behind Xianhou. Xuanhou's expression was normal. In front of her, a mirror that looked like a spatial door reflected brilliance. Xuanhou's figure seemed to have changed time and space. She appeared on the other side of the mirror, and it became the air emperor facing the mirror. The mirror shone brightly and spewed a light beam with 5 colors at the air emperor. How can a grain of light compete with the sun and the moon? The air emperor sneered. His figure spread out like a ripple and disappeared. The light beam passed through him and didn't hurt him at all. Sky realm. Clang, clang, clang. Pieces of glass appeared from the void, forming a space made of glass, covering Xianhou. After the space was formed, the essence of the glass rapidly faded, turning into a void that was deeper than the void. Xianhou was in the void. There was no sky, no earth, no direction. Mysterious Tao, reverse heaven and earth. Xuanhou's expression didn't change at all. She formed a hand seal, and an ancient gate appeared. As the gate appeared, the void seemed to lose its meaning and was forcefully twisted, turning into a normal space. With a snap, Xianhou broke through the space barrier and reappeared in reality. What a mysterious Tao. The air emperor's expression turned solemn. In terms of combat prowess, his opponent was clearly weaker than him. However, her mysterious Tao wasn't something to be underestimated. Her methods were unfathomable, and she could even reverse his sky realm. At this moment, a beam of sword light suddenly appeared on the huge battlefield. This beam of sword light pierced through the sky, illuminating the world. It was like a heavenly sword that came from the underworld, slashing straight at Yichun. Anyone who faced this beam of sword light would have no way to dodge or retreat. This was because this beam of sword light seemed to have a direct trajectory, but also seemed as though it didn't exist in this world. Even an expert like the Air Emperor was momentarily distracted by this beam of sword light. It's the Azure Cloud sword art of the Azure Cloud Sword Emperor. Someone exclaimed. Chapter 975. Green Cloud Sword Emperor, one of the 2 great sword emperors of Sky Sword Continent, was equally as famous as Snowflake Sword Emperor. His Green Cloud sword art was known as the most unfathomable sword art. Those with weak defense and slow speed might not even be able to block a single sword from him. During the battle between Yichun, Su King, and Black Dragon Old Ancestor, 9-headed Serpent Emperor, Green Cloud Sword Emperor had been searching for Yichun's weakness. Since Yichun had already reached the realm of Heart Control Sword, even Green Cloud Sword Emperor couldn't find a flaw in a short period of time. Fortunately, Yichun was fighting 1 against 3 at the same time. His Heart Control Sword Art's realm fluctuated a little, and that moment just now was the moment with the greatest fluctuation. Therefore, Green Cloud Sword Emperor took out his sword, and it was one of the 3 great killing moves of Green Cloud Sword Art: Heaven and Earth Clarity. Heaven and Earth Clarity was unavoidable. The bright sword light seemed to descend from the 9 heavens as it attacked Yichun. "I've been waiting for you," Yichun roared. His heart-driving sword didn't reveal the slightest flaw. The stronger one's mental state was, the more powerful one's heart-driving sword ability would be. He had intentionally revealed a flaw. He knew that Azure Sky Sword Emperor was looking for his flaw, just like how he was always paying attention to Azure Sky Sword Emperor. Clang! Yichun's left hand pulled out the third sword at lightning speed. This sword was sparkling like countless stars. This was a semi-extreme grade sword forged by Yichun, called Starlight Convergence. Although Starlight Convergence was only a semi-extreme grade sword and couldn't compare to the Iron Blood Silver Blue sword, Yichun had infused his Immortal sword intent into it. Therefore, its sturdiness wasn't inferior to the Iron Blood Silver Blue sword, and it wouldn't break easily. Swish! With a flicker of starlight, Yichun slashed out to meet Green Cloud, Sword Emperor's fatal sword. "You think my heaven and earth clarity is so easy to receive?" Green Cloud, Sword Emperor's expression didn't change. His sword aura rose by 30%, and the sword light speed was as fast as the sun. At this moment, there was no silhouette, only sword light. Green Cloud, Sword Emperor had already merged his body into the sword light, becoming one with the world, becoming one with the sword. Pop! As the two swords clashed, an intense shockwave spread out. Indeed, it was an explosion. The powerful shockwave directly shattered the space, and several thick spatial cracks extended hundreds of li away. Some life and death kings who were too close and couldn't dodge in time were blown back while spurting out blood as if they were struck by lightning. As soon as the two of them came into contact with each other, the Azure Cloud Sword Emperor was suddenly blasted away in the next moment. He turned a few times in the air before he was able to disperse the terrifying shockwave. This is the vibration sword art. The Azure Sky Sword Emperor's expression turned solemn. Ordinary vibrational sword arts wouldn't be able to enter the eyes of the Azure Sky Sword Emperor. For example, the Demonic Saber King's demonic saber art might be powerful, but the Azure Sky Sword Emperor wouldn't put it in his eyes. No matter how powerful one's technique was, if one's profound wasn't strong enough, it would be hard for one to reach the next level. However, Yichun's vibrational sword art didn't just contain the profound of metal. It also contained the profound of earth. It had started to enter the palace of vibrational energy, and it was able to unleash the true might of vibrational energy. "What do you think of my Tianju sword?" Yichun sent the Azure Sky Sword Emperor flying with his left sword while his right sword blocked Su King's attack. Tianju sword was the third form of the vibrational sword art. The first form of the vibrational sword art was the Heaven-Cutting Sword. The second form was the Heaven-Inflicting Sword, and the third form was the Tianju sword. In the past, the second form of the Heaven-Inflicting Sword was already the limit, and it was impossible for it to make any further progress. However, when Yichun completed the Merciless Water and Fire art, he comprehended the essence of thousands of sword arts in the sword world. Many of these sword arts contain vibrational energy. With the help of these experiences, Yichun's vibrational energy finally reached a new height, far surpassing the Demonic Saber Kings. He also started to integrate the profound of earth into it, perfecting the most fundamental vibrational energy. It could be said that the formation of the Tianju sword was a natural process. It was the moment when the Merciless Water and Fire art reached the grand completion stage. Yichun's strength rose to a new level. It wasn't as simple as having an additional supreme sword art. What a great Tianju sword! The Azure Cloud Sword Emperor took a deep breath, and his eyes turned even colder. "Yichun, very good. You are worthy of my full strength. I take back what I said earlier. I won't be able to defeat you within 10 moves, but this is the end of it." Su King suddenly retreated, maintaining a distance of 10 li from Yichun. The Azure Cloud Sword Emperor and Yichun looked at Su King at the same time. As the Sword Emperor, the Azure Cloud Sword Emperor's battle prowess had always been formidable. Although the Snowflower Sword Emperor shared the same fame as him, many people felt that the Snowflower Sword Emperor was slightly weaker than the Azure Cloud Sword Emperor. However, the gap between them wasn't huge. The Azure Cloud Sword Emperor had always been wary of Su King. Su King was someone who hid his true strength and had never revealed his true strength. Because of this, no one knew exactly how strong he was. If there was anyone among the titled monarchs with 5-star battle prowess, it would be the illusory emperor. Even if it was someone as powerful as the Golden Turtle Old Ancestor, Azure Cloud Sword Emperor was confident that he could fight against him. As for Yi Chun, although he had heavily injured the Golden Turtle Old Ancestor and had the battle prowess of a 5-star Overlord, he didn't display his full strength in a 1 versus 3 situation. He had always believed that Su King wasn't that simple. Perhaps his true strength had already surpassed the Golden Turtle Old Ancestor, and he was a 5-star Overlord. And this was without the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pellet. Once Su King used it, no one knew to what realm his battle prowess would reach. Yi Chun, you're the first person to force me to reveal my full strength. You should be honored. Undefeatable Void Battle Art. Su King's essence, chi, and spirit instantly rose by 50%. His violent aura caused the entire space to tremble. It was as if he had turned into an undefeatable god of battle, and no one could defeat him. Secret Battle Art. The Azure Cloud Sword Emperor squinted his eyes. Secret Battle Art was a type of secret art that was different from other secret arts. This kind of secret art was innately used for battle. It could increase one's essence, chi, and spirit in all aspects. Essence represented the strength of one's flesh and blood. Chi represented true yuan cultivation, and spirit represented the soul. When all three were increased, it would bring about an overall increase in one's battle prowess. It could be said that the most powerful type of secret art was the secret battle art. Soul secret arts and cultivation burning secret arts couldn't compare to the secret battle art. I see. Yi Chun understood in his heart. Su King's undefeatable void battle art was the same as Yuan Emperor's 3 flowers borrowing Dao. They were both secret battle arts, but it was obvious that the 3 flowers borrowing Dao was much stronger than the undefeatable void battle art. After using the 3 flowers borrowing Dao, one's battle prowess could be doubled. As for Su King's essence, chi, and spirit, his battle prowess should only increase by 50%. It was far from the 3 flowers borrowing Dao. Great Destruction Golden Inferno Palm. Boom! With his battle prowess increased by 50%, Su King's aura surged and soared into the 9 heavens. The same martial art, in his hands, was displayed to a level comparable to a peak profound martial art. The space shattered and was burned into crystals, dripping down. That blazing red palm seemed like it could easily pierce through a star and incinerate everything. This time, Yi Chun is in danger. Many people even stopped fighting and looked at Yi Chun. The Black Dragon Old Ancestor, who couldn't get away from the 8 trigram sword formation, snorted coldly. He thinks he's a genius and doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He thinks he's invincible after becoming a titled monarch. If he thinks he can defeat us just because he killed the yellow-robed old monster and the other 2, then all our years of cultivation have been wasted. The 9-headed serpent emperor on the side also sneered inwardly. He wasn't as powerful as the Black Dragon Old Ancestor, but he was still a king of the demon race that had dominated the Blood Sky continent for hundreds of years. It didn't feel good to be looked down upon. Su King had revealed his strongest battle prowess. He knew that this battle was over. As long as he could take care of Yi Chun, the others wouldn't be a threat. Not good. The pressure on Spirit Pill King was the lightest. Almost no one dared to attack him with their lives on the line, and they even avoided him. If he was killed, there was no guarantee that someone wouldn't come after his life. It should be known that Pill King Island and Spirit Pill King were transcendent existences in true spirit world. Rumor had it that Pill King Island had a 6-star king as its protector. Killing Spirit Pill King would be too much even if they had 10 lives. Therefore, they all avoided Spirit Pill King and looked for others to kill. This caused Spirit Pill King to have no opponents and could only put out fires. At this moment, when the Spirit Dan King saw Su King reveal his strongest battle prowess, he couldn't help but feel worried. Yi Chen was a newcomer after all. His foundation couldn't compare to Su King's, and he didn't have as many trump cards as Su King. Not to mention the modern era. Even in the ancient era, there weren't many people who could create such a battle prowess. Unknowingly, before the Surreal Emperor had even thrown out his palm attack, most of the people had stopped battling and turned their heads to look at Yi Chen and the Surreal Emperor in the middle of the battlefield. In their eyes, the Surreal Emperor had thrown out a palm attack toward Yi Chen, and the palm power had melted the space, carrying an aura that seemed to be able to burn everything in its path. The surrounding natural yuan qi had all started to boil up like a raging ocean. As for Yi Chen, he was like a small boat in the ocean and could be destroyed at any moment. In the blink of an eye, facing Su King's strongest attack, the iron blood silver blue sword in Yi Chen's hand ignited with a green flame. In a thousandth of a blink of an eye, the flame burned to its limit and the space around it silently melted. Yi Chen quickly raised the iron blood silver blue sword and slashed out. Fire and water merciless. Rip! A green light flickered, and the entire battlefield seemed to be divided into two by a layer of green sword veil. The tip of the veil bombarded Su King's fist, which was the boundary between the two's auras. On one side was a scorching chi flow that could incinerate everything, and on the other side was an even more berserk, world-destroying water and fire power. The strongest against the strongest. Bang! In the next moment, a world-rending explosion resounded, and everyone felt the space around them becoming unstable. Some life and death kings who had escaped into the void were forcibly shaken out, puking blood. Air Emperor Space Realm and Xuanhou Space Gate both collapsed, causing the two to stop fighting. After the explosion, everyone saw a figure being blasted away. It was Su King. Chapter 976. How could this be? Su King was sent flying by a single sword strike? The Black Dragon ancestor felt that his brain couldn't process what was going on. Su King was extremely powerful. Before using the Invincible Void technique, he already had peak 5-star battle prowess. And after using it, his battle prowess had reached the level of a 5-star tyrant, extremely close to 6 stars. It could be said that he was invincible under 6 stars. Impossible! How could the Sect Master lose? The Heaven Void King's calm expression froze for the first time. As the Void Sect's first Supreme Elder, no one knew Su King's strength better than him. Su King's Invincible Void technique wasn't a secret in his eyes, because this secret technique was taught to Su King by the previous generation's Sect Master. He had also been taught half a volume of it, which could increase his battle prowess by 30%. It's a top-grade profound sword art. Su Onho immediately saw the crux of the problem. Her world-filling snow had already touched the level of a top-grade profound martial art, and the only difference was the degree of fusion. Therefore, the merciless water and fire could only be explained by a top-grade profound sword art. The water profound and the fire profound are diametrically opposed to each other. So even if it isn't at the perfection level, it can still be considered a top-grade profound sword art. A top-grade profound sword art. At this moment, the Azure Cloud Sword Emperor, the Air Emperor, the Battle Sky Elephant Emperor, the Black Dragon Ancestor, and the others all knew why Yi Chen could send Su King flying. It was because his sword art had surpassed everyone else's realm. A peerless genius. The Spirit Pill King could only use this word to describe Yi Chen. He was only in his 30s, but he could already grasp a top-grade profound sword art. Such an achievement was already not inferior to the ancient sword kings, and might even surpass them. After sending Su King flying, Yi Chen's sword aura reached its peak. In the sky above his head, a huge sword shadow was faintly discernible. This was a phenomenon caused by the sword domain being pushed to the extreme. Now, this huge sword shadow was actually expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye, condensing, as if it had been tempered. Third layer sword domain. The Azure Cloud Sword Emperor's eyes narrowed. His sword domain was the strongest in the Elysium, and it had already reached the late phase of the 3rd level. Yi Chen's sword domain had actually reached the middle phase of the 3rd level. One must know that Yi Chen was only at the early phase of the 3rd level when he challenged the sword world. It was beyond his expectations that Yi Chun could advance by a small level in such a short period of time. Although the sword domain was derived from the sword Dao cultivation technique, it didn't mean that it was only related to the sword Dao cultivation technique. The sword domain was the quintessence of a swordsman. Only when one's understanding and comprehension of the sword Dao improved could the sword domain be improved. As the owner of the sword domain, Yi Chun naturally sensed its improvement, but he wasn't surprised. After comprehending the essence of a few thousand types of sword techniques in the sword world, Yi Chun's other aspects had obvious improvements, and only his sword domain hadn't improved. After the battle with Su King, his battle intent and sword intent had erupted to the limit, and he'd finally improved a step further. The explosive airflow gradually weakened, and a few hundred miles away, Su King's figure slowly stood up. His eyes erupted with a divine light that was a few meters long, and it locked onto Yi Chun from afar like a fiend god. Yi Chun, very good. You're worthy of me fighting with my full strength. Su King didn't have any injuries on his body, and it seemed that the sword strike from before had merely sent him flying. You're worthy of me fighting with my full strength as well. Yi Chun's eyes narrowed slightly, and they became long and thin. His pupils emitted a material bright light. Sword intent. Unknowingly, the Azure Cloud Sword Emperor had retreated from the battlefield. If he continued to attack Yi Chun, he would undoubtedly anger Su King. Of course, he didn't attack anyone else, because he was sure that if he attacked someone else, Yi Chun would definitely drag him into the battle again. This battle will be decided by the outcome of the battle between Su King and Yi Chun. The Spiritual Pill Emperor said loudly. No one objected, and no one agreed. However, everyone stopped and didn't continue fighting. Unknowingly, it could be considered that they tacitly agreed to the Spiritual Pill Emperor's words. Demon Flower Emperor will decide the victor next time. The Battle Sky Elephant Emperor coldly said to the Demon Flower Emperor, I'm ready anytime. The Demon Flower Emperor knew that it was impossible to determine the victor in a short period of time. If they really wanted to fight, it wouldn't end even after 3 days and 3 nights, unless one side's demonic energy or energy was exhausted. However, it was obvious that this battle wouldn't last for so long, and it would only be a waste of time if they continued fighting. At the same time, Suan Ho, the Air Emperor, the Innate Demon Emperor, the Hell King, Evil King, and the others split up and went to their respective camps. The battle between monarchs was very intense. Fortunately, the battle was short and no one died. After all, the immortal body of monarchs wasn't just for show. In a situation where their strength was equal, they wouldn't die in a short period of time. If they couldn't win, they could constantly dodge and use guerrilla tactics. Of course, although no one died, there were many who were heavily injured. Some were injured by the soul attacks, and some had their cultivation base greatly damaged and needed some time to recuperate. Among these people, the majority were in Yi Chun's camp. After all, the disadvantage in numbers couldn't be ignored. The two camps were facing each other, and between them, Yi Chun and Su King were also facing each other. Su King, you can use the Violent Tiger Dragon Elixir now. Otherwise, you won't be able to defeat me. The Azure Cloud Sword Emperor, the Black Dragon Old Ancestor, and the Nine-Headed Serpent Emperor all returned to the camp behind Su King. Yi Chun didn't need to be distracted anymore. Although he could still burst out with his strongest strength, the strength of a genius was to break through his limits. If he didn't put his heart and soul into the battle, it would be a dream to break through his limits. Su King said indifferently, even if I don't use the Violent Tiger Dragon Elixir, the final victory will be mine. Soon, you will know why I said that. In that case, let's fight. Wong. Yi Chun's body shook and his sword domain expanded again, covering Su King. You have a sword domain. So do I. Transparent ripples bloomed from Su King's body, and the ripples spread out, canceling out the sword domain. This kind of domain was deep and unfathomable like the void. It's the void domain. Someone recognized it. Domains were also derived from cultivation techniques, but they weren't as pure as the sword domain. Domains had countless attributes. For example, the Nirvana Demon Emperor's Nirvana domain, the Yuan Emperor's sovereign domain and Xuanho's mysterious domain. Each had their own functions. In comparison, the sword domain's attribute was more simple, but being simple wasn't a bad thing. No matter what domain it would be weaker when facing the sword domain. Boom! Almost at the same time, the two charged at each other. Void Palm Imprint. Su King no longer used the Annihilation Golden Flame Palm, but changed to a Space Profound Palm art. Su King was like the Air Emperor and Xianho, proficient in Space Profound. Perhaps the Void Palm Imprint wasn't much stronger than the Annihilation Golden Flame Palm, but it had more variations, and it wasn't easy for Yi Chun to see through its weaknesses. With a palm strike, the void caved in, and a huge, transparent palm imprint attacked Yi Chun from afar. Yi Chun could feel that the space he was in was firmly sealed. Endless void pressure came from all directions, as if it wanted to crush his body and distort his movement trajectory. Merciless water and fire, break for me. Yi Chun sheathed the iron blood silver blue sword and replaced it with the Sky Scorpio sword that he had used to attack the Black Dragon Old Ancestor and the Nine-Headed Snake. With the extreme greatsword in hand, Yi Chun's aura increased without a limit. That berserk sword chi sliced in all directions, creating cracks in that unbreakable space. The formless pressure of the void immediately dispersed like a deflated balloon. The Sky Scorpio sword blazed with green flames as Yi Chun fiercely swung it out. Dong! The transparent handprint and the emerald sword screen clashed together, causing the space around them to continuously shatter. In the end, it was obvious that the emerald sword screen had the upper hand. A sliver of emerald sword chi that looked like a thin thread cut into the void emperor's body. Clang! The clothes on Su King's body were burned to ashes, revealing the golden battle armor underneath. This was a supreme grade battle armor. When the green sword chi cut on it, blazing white sparks burst out, leaving a faint mark. As the golden light circulated, the mark disappeared, but Su King's body slightly paused. The green sword chi seemed to be only a wisp, but that violent power wasn't that easy to neutralize. Shifting through the void, Yi Chun used the earth track and instantly appeared in all directions around Su King. It was as if there were hundreds of Yi Chun, slashing hundreds of swords at Su King. These attacks weren't ultimate moves, but they were fast, especially when pushed by Yi Chun's heart-controlling sword realm. His swordsmanship reached an extreme level. Golden bell, inextinguishable. Su King's eyes flickered with golden light. He put his palms together, and in the next moment, a huge golden bell phantom appeared out of nowhere, protecting him. Dang, 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 dang. The golden bell phantom's defense was very strong, and no matter how many times Yi Chun attacked, he couldn't break through it. All he could do was create faint golden ripples. What a strong defense, profound martial art. Innate demon monarch's face turned solemn. Below 6 stars, Su King could be the strongest in the world, and it seemed like it wasn't just for show. Be it offense or defense, Su King was at the top, and he had almost no weaknesses. Orbit Kill Secret Art. All of a sudden, Yi Chun's swordsmanship changed, and he used the heaven-shattering sword art's second style, Orbit Kill. A shocking scene occurred. The invisible sword chi actually ignored the golden bell phantom and slashed at Su King's body. Although the power of Orbit Kill wasn't as strong as the Void Essence slash, it was still a sword art that Yi Chun created with great effort. It had its own unique aspects. Following the trajectory of the spatial fluctuations, Orbit Kill could ignore any energy defense and deal a fatal blow. Su King's face turned pale, and he took a few steps back. This Yi Chun is really strong to be able to create such a strange sword art that ignores all energy defenses. Doesn't this mean that the Zhen Yuan armor is useless? Many people were shocked. Chi. One step at a time, Yi Chun's movement was ethereal, and the invisible sword chi kept slashing at Su King's body. There were some places that weren't protected by the extreme grade battle armor, and the sword chi left bloody marks on them. But as time passed, Yi Chun frowned. No matter how weak the Orbit Kill was, it shouldn't be unable to cut through the opponent's skin, right? 6th rank spirit body, absorbing damage. Beside Demon Flower Emperor, Xuanho's expression was extremely solemn. She didn't expect that Su King's spirit body had already reached the 6th rank. This is bad. Demon Flower Emperor and Zhan Tian Elephant Emperor had fought before. Although the latter's physical defense was strong, even stronger than Su King's, his spirit body was only at the peak of the 5th rank. For Su King's spirit body to reach the 6th rank, it couldn't have been refined by himself. He must have used countless treasures to refine his spirit body. For example, in the Pill King convention, he had bought a 3-revolution body refining pellet. Chapter 977. 5th step spirit body was already the pinnacle of mortal bodies, and its life magnetic field was frightening. At the 6th step, not only would the spirit body be several times more powerful, it would also gain a special ability, damage absorption. Of course, it couldn't absorb all of the damage, but absorbing 20 to 30% was already astonishing. It should be known that a powerful 5-star King's protective Jin Yuan was already very powerful, adding on the supreme grade battle armor. Even if their defense wasn't impenetrable, it wasn't easily broken. At this moment, with the damage absorption special ability, its effect could be said to be earth-shattering. Although Yi Chen's orbital strike had directly penetrated the Golden Bell Phantom and protective Jin Yuan to attack Su King's body, the 6-step spirit body's defense was inconceivably powerful. Moreover, with a portion of the damage absorbed, it could only leave behind a faint bloody mark. Not even the skin was completely damaged. One could well imagine how freakish Su King's defense was. What a good 6-step spirit body. With a flicker, Yi Chun retreated dozens of li, maintaining a certain distance from Su King. Now you should know where my confidence comes from, right? Su King raised his head and coldly looked at Yi Chun. Yi Chun faintly nodded. Indeed, your strength and trump card are both beyond my expectations. I didn't expect you to forcefully raise your spirit body to the 6th step. Under normal circumstances, apart from body refining kings, peak 5th step spirit body was pretty much the limit of life and death kings. If they wanted to continue, they would have to constantly consume heavenly treasures and use their medicinal power to refine their spirit body. Not to mention Su King. Even Yi Chun had to consume a lot of treasures to raise his spirit body to the 5th step, such as spirit energy crystal stones, dragon bloodgrass, dragon bone jade marrow, and sky fiend fire spirit fruit. Although there seemed to be a difference of 1 step between the 5th step and the 6th step, the difference in strength was several times, or even 10 times, and the consumption of treasures was much higher. It could be said that advancing from the 5th step to the 6th step was not as easy as advancing from the 1st step to the 5th step. However, thinking about it, it was understandable. Su King was the sect master of the Void Sect, and the Void Sect was the #1 sect in the world. After countless years of accumulation, it was still acceptable for them to have so many resources. This time, Yi Chun is going to lose for sure. Su King has a rank 6 spirit body, which makes him invincible. Unless it's a 6-star king, who can injure him? Even an ordinary 6-star king wouldn't be able to kill Su King with a single strike. Su King could easily use the space profound to escape. Look, I knew that Su King wasn't simple. This Yi Chun was arrogant and conceited, and he finally suffered a setback. He thought that he was invincible, but now he has finally met the real invincible. Behind Su King, everyone looked at Yi Chun with disdain and sneers. Behind Yi Chun is already very powerful. Apart from Su King, who here can contend against him? Moreover, he has only entered life and death realm for less than a year. If he had more time, Su King and 6-star kings would not be his opponent. Unfortunately, he doesn't have much time. Heaven is jealous of geniuses. Not necessarily. Look, Yi Chen's expression hasn't changed at all. Does he still have some trump card? Perhaps he does. Perhaps he is just naturally calm. At this moment, not only did Su King's faction not believe that Yi Chun could win, even Yi Chen's faction didn't believe that Yi Chun could win. The only difference was that they had different standpoints. I believe in him, Xianhou said indifferently. Oh, Demon Flower Emperor looked at Xianhou. Xianhou seemed to be talking to herself. Perhaps you guys don't know much about him. I and Dragon King have been paying attention to him since a long time ago. He has been able to turn the tables in countless desperate situations. This is only one of them. His future path is still very long, and he won't fall now. Confidence in a person needed time to be maintained. If one knew the person well, then one would have complete faith in him. If one didn't know the person for long, then one's confidence will be greatly reduced. At present, apart from Xianhou, everyone else's confidence in Yichun was greatly reduced to the point where it couldn't even be considered confidence. Since even you, Xianhou, believe in him, how can I, Demon Flower Emperor, not believe him? Letting out a breath, Demon Flower Emperor calmed down. Yichun, as my grandson's master, you can't die. Among the crowd, Spirit Pill King was also very worried. Hee, Yichun, you forced my Blackwater Alliance to disband and occupied the Devouring Island. You didn't expect retribution to come, right? Once you lose, the others are nothing to worry about. At that time, I will attack your Yi family first. At the back of Su King's camp, a figure stood there. It was the former Blackwater Alliance's Vice Alliance Master, Yin Sky King. However, his face was filled with viciousness. Yichun, you have no way out now. Whether you are afraid of battle or not, the result will not change. After executing the undefeatable Void battle technique, the Void Emperor's aura was like a monstrous tsunami, rippling out in waves. Coupled with that demonic, godlike body of his, the pressure that the Void Emperor gave off right now was boundless. Yichun laughed. Su King, I admit that your defense is very strong, but how can you defeat me? Your attack is much weaker than mine. Hearing Yichun's words, many people reacted. That's right. Su King's defense was very strong, but no matter how strong it was only passive. Unless one's attack was stronger than Yichun's, there was no way to defeat Yichun. At this moment, Yichun's side was filled with confidence, while the expressions of Su King's side were a bit ugly. Is that so? Su King's expression didn't change. The undefeatable Void technique is a secret battle technique, and even my soul force has increased. If I use a soul attack against you, I wonder how much power you can use. Soul attack secret techniques could shake the opponent's soul and cause their strength to drop. This was what Yichun used to deal with Blackwater Ancestor and the yellow-robed old monster. Try it. Yichun's smile didn't diminish. As you wish. The undefeatable Void technique couldn't be maintained indefinitely. Su King didn't want to waste time with Yichun like this. His figure flashed, and like a jumping arc of light, he pounced on Yichun from an unimaginable angle, spirit-extinguishing thread. Without a sound, countless invisible yellow silk threads shot out from between the surreal Emperor's eyebrows. These silk threads looked like the silk of a spider, but compared to it, the yellow silk threads were even more crystal clear. Moreover, they were so fast that they looked like phantoms as they drilled into Yichun's eyebrows one by one. So light. Between Yichun's eyebrows, the silver vertical eye opened. With a puff, a silver light beam shot out, like the scorching sun melting snow. A large number of yellow threads were eliminated, but there were too many of them. The silver light beam that Yichun shot out couldn't destroy them all at once, and could only sweep half a circle. The next moment, hundreds of yellow threads entered Yichun's forehead. Swoosh! In Yichun's mind, there was a rustling sound. This was the sound of the yellow threads invading his sea of soul. Destroy. Suppress. Something strange appeared in the sea of soul, causing the destruction sword spirit and the immortal sword spirit to tremble together. Although the soul was different from the will, the two had something in common. They could both affect the other. The destruction sword spirit shot out a large amount of black sword intent, attacking the yellow threads, while the immortal sword spirit released a halo of sword intent to protect the sea of soul. However, Su King's soul attack was too powerful. Moreover, in terms of will, Yichun didn't have much of an advantage. The destruction sword spirit was a 6th-step sword spirit. Compared to an ordinary 7th-step sword spirit, the immortal sword spirit was only at the peak of the 5th step, which was equivalent to a peak 6th-step sword spirit. On the other hand, powerful titled monarchs like Su King and Air Emperor had 7-step wills or even peak 7-step wills. Therefore, Yi Qin's destruction sword intent could only eliminate a small portion of the yellow threads, and the immortal sword intent wouldn't last long. However, it was enough. Yi Qin himself also cultivated a soul defense secret art. After reaching the life and death realm, whether it was a soul attack secret art or a defensive secret art, they were both indispensable. Primordial Spirit Undying. In the depths of the Sea of Soul, a strand of light blossomed. At first, it was only a tiny speck, but in a thousandth of a blink, it expanded to millions and millions of times, illuminating the entire Sea of Soul. All the yellow threads immediately disintegrated upon contact with this inextinguishable light, failing to cause any damage. Primordial Spirit Undying, Primordial Spirit Lock, was a set of soul secret arts, and Yuan Emperor wasn't the creator of this set. According to Yuan Emperor, this was a soul secret art created by an extremely powerful ancient emperor. It was called Primordial Spirit Secret Art, and he had obtained it by chance. Since then, he had never suffered a loss in a battle of the soul. Primordial Spirit secret arts were extremely difficult to cultivate. Although Yi Qin had only cultivated Primordial Spirit Undying to minor completion, it was already extremely useful. If Su King thought that he could injure Yi Qin with a sharp increase in soul power, he was gravely mistaken. Su King's brows creased. It wasn't that he didn't know that Yi Qin was a soul genius. However, in terms of soul power, Yi Qin was only comparable to him. It was impossible for Yi Qin to be much stronger. Now he had used Void Invincible Battle Art, and his soul power had skyrocketed. Coupled with the extremely tyrannical spirit extinguishing threads, it still didn't have any effect. Su King, you take my primordial spirit lock as well. Yi Qin groaned with a low voice as a mass of golden light shot out of his vertical eye. It was vaguely visible as a golden halo. The golden halo was extremely fast, disappearing into the surreal emperor's forehead within a second. Su King's expression changed several times. Inside his Sea of Soul, a huge golden halo attempted to trap his Sea of Soul. Its edges were incomparably sharp, unceasingly slicing. Spirit extinguishing threads, pull out for me. Su King was already prepared. Countless yellow threads shot out, pulling the golden halo outwards. In a short while, the invisible golden halo was actually pulled out of Su King's Sea of Soul. Everyone could only see this scene when they released their soul power. This is too thrilling. Someone couldn't help but say. Although soul attacks were silent and didn't have a grand scene, compared to a head-on battle, soul attacks were much more dangerous. If one wasn't careful, they could be seriously injured and their soul damaged. As expected, Yi Qin wasn't surprised by this result. Just like the primordial spirit undying, Yi Qin's primordial spirit lock was also at the minor completion realm. He didn't think of using the primordial spirit lock to injure Su King's soul. He just wanted to test its power. There was a trade-off. Chapter 978. Su King's expression became slightly gloomy. The soul-extinguishing thread was his most powerful soul attack, and he had never used it before. This was his trump card, and he wouldn't use it easily. His original goal was to injure Yi Qin's soul so that he wouldn't be able to push his battle power to the limit. However, he didn't expect that Yi Qin's soul also didn't have any weaknesses. If he wanted to attack, he could attack, and if he wanted to defend, he could defend. That golden halo-shaped soul attack was extremely mysterious. If it weren't for the fact that his opponent hadn't cultivated it to a certain level, it'd be hard to say whether he could come out unscathed. Since the soul attack didn't work, Su King made a prompt decision and brazenly attacked. Void Palm Print. Great Destruction Golden Burning Palm. Brilliant Light Fist. High Void Finger. Hand Seals, Palm Arts, Fist Arts, Finger Arts. Su King's hands moved left and right, throwing out 4 killing moves in a row. He wanted to exhaust Yi Qin to death with his vigorous cultivation base. He could see that Yi Qin's cultivation base wasn't perfect, probably only 60 to 70%. His cultivation base was originally 2 times higher than Yi Qin's, but now it was 3 times higher. Boom, 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 boom. Transparent hand seals, flaming palm shadows, glowing fists, and illusory finger energies all swept towards Yichun. Moreover, these 4 killing moves of Su King all had their own specialties. Void Palm could restrict Yi Chen's speed, Great Destruction Golden Burning Palm had extreme destructive power, Brilliant Light Fist was as fast as light, and High Void Finger was illusory and illusory. Apart from Great Destruction Golden Burning Palm, each move had the effect of restraining speed or proficiency in Space Profound. Adding them together, even if Yi Chen's orbit step could appear and disappear like a ghost, he still wouldn't be able to dodge. Forcefully dodging would only give Su King an opportunity. Separate. Facing these 4 killing moves, Yi Chen neither retreated nor gave way. He raised the Sky Scorpio sword with both hands and heavily slashed down. Then, in an instant, he slashed out the second and third slashes. There were a total of 3 strikes. The 3 dark green sword curtains separated everything in front of them. The transparent palm imprints, flaming palm shadows, glowing fists, and illusory finger forces were all torn apart by the violent sword curtains. Fight! Fight crazily. No matter who lives or dies, it won't affect me. However, it's most likely that Yi Chen will die. Su King's cultivation and defense are both higher than his. If this continues, the result will be obvious. The Heavenly King sneered as he watched the battle. This can't go on. Innate Demon Emperor frowned. Yi Chen's cultivation base was indeed not weak. He had cultivated for more than 1,000 years. However, he seemed to have encountered something and was left with only 60 to 70% of his Zhen Yuan. Originally, this 60 to 70% of his Zhen Yuan was enough, but that was under the condition that they didn't engage in a prolonged battle. Once they engaged in a prolonged battle, not to mention 60 to 70% of his cultivation base, even 10,000 years of cultivation base wouldn't be enough. Who knew how long the battle would last? In ancient times, it wasn't like there weren't cases of evenly matched titled monarchs fighting for 3 days and 3 nights. Although Su King's offense wasn't as strong as Yi Chen's, his defense was stronger. Yi Chen couldn't do anything to him. In the long run, no matter how much Zhen Yuan Yi Chen had, it wouldn't last long. The Void Invincible Battle Art can last this long. In fact, what Su King was planning, Yi Chen was also planning. He was waiting for Su King's secret art to retreat and his battle prowess to decline. However, up until now, Su King's aura didn't fluctuate at all. It seemed like he could still maintain this battle prowess for a long time, and his Zhen Yuan was almost depleted by a third. In the crowd, the Heavenly Void King thought, the reason why the Void Invincible Battle Art is called Undefeatable is because it can be maintained for a long time. Furthermore, there are 3 Supreme Grade Essence Stones left behind by our Void Gate's previous Sectmaster, and each of them can increase the duration of the Void Invincible Battle Art by a lot. The battle between the two was getting more and more intense, reaching a climax. Since this era, there had never been such an intense battle. Under normal circumstances, it would end in a very short time. Either one side would be killed, the other side would flee, or both sides would stop fighting. No one would fight for such a long time when they knew they couldn't do anything to the other. This was no longer an ordinary battle, but a battle of life and death. Su King's long hair fluttered in the air as he threw out a palm. Behind his back, a white gold chi flow appeared. One end of the chi flow was connected to Su King's spine, while the other end entered the void, as if it was absorbing something from the void. Yi Chen, my Void Invincible Battle Art will get stronger the more I fight. Let's see what you can use to fight me. Su King's battle prowess had clearly increased by a level, gradually reaching the same level as Yi Chen's. The more you fight, the stronger you get. Yi Chen also noticed this. The Void Invincible Battle Art's name shouldn't have appeared out of nowhere. It must have something to do with the void. That white gold chi flow hadn't been there before, but now it suddenly appeared. It wasn't that simple. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere. Yi Chen borrowed this force and suddenly flew back, his blue clothes fluttering in the wind. Trump cards, I also have them. You can get stronger the more you fight. So can I. With a flicker of purple light, Yi Chun flung his palm, and the sky Scorpio sword floated above his head, its tip pointing forward. Yi Chun also has a trump card? Many people were startled. Up until now, Su King's trump cards were endless, but Yi Chun hadn't revealed much yet. Impossible. How could this Yi Chun still have trump cards? Sky King was most afraid of hearing this. 72 swords, Earth Fiend's sword art. Yi Chun's right hand formed a sword finger and suddenly pointed out. Chi 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 chi. The sky Scorpio sword trembled and suddenly turned to 72 sword phantoms. The sword phantoms were purple in color and rapidly arranged, ultimately forming a huge purple sword. This was not the end. As soon as the huge purple sword appeared, it immediately established a connection with the heaven and earth. In the void, the island on the ocean below faintly had a black chi flow rushing toward the huge purple sword. It's the Earth Yuan evil chi. A life and death king cultivating Earth Jun Yuan was suddenly startled. The evil chi of the Earth origin was a kind of tyrannical energy that was hidden within the Earth origin. Normally, when he cultivated, he would try his best to refine the evil chi of the Earth origin to prevent it from corroding his body, causing his body to stiffen and go berserk. However, he was very clear that the evil chi of the Earth origin was an extremely powerful energy. If used properly, its lethality was extraordinary. Break for me. Su King sensed the might of this sword. Without waiting for the huge purple sword's might to reach its limit, he struck out with a palm, the blazing palm shadow incomparably powerful. Go! Yi Chun's eyes shone brightly as his sword finger guided the huge purple sword died with black chi flow towards Su King. Pung! A world-shaking explosion resounded as the huge purple sword sliced apart the flaming palm shadow like a hot knife through butter. Golden Bell undying. Su King didn't expect this huge purple sword to be so powerful. He promptly put his palms together and used his strongest defensive profound martial skill, Golden Bell undying. Immediately, a golden bell shadow covered Su King's body. With a dang sound, the vast sound wave spread out rapidly, creating a ripple in the heaven and earth. Some life and death kings felt their bodies tremble, then were blown away as if they were riding on clouds. Blood leaked out from the corner of their mouths. This sound wave was a kind of vibrating power, and protective Jun Yuan had almost no effect on it. Rumble. The bell wave spread far and wide, causing the ocean below to explode and countless islands to be destroyed. Although Su King had the protection of the Golden Bell shadow, he was still blown away. Only after flying for 1,000 li did he gradually stabilize his body. What a powerful sword art! Everyone was stupefied. The defensive sword art in Yi Chun's hands is more than 10 times more powerful than the legends say. Among the life and death kings present, which one of them hadn't seen countless martial skills? They all had some understanding of the defensive sword art. However, the defensive sword art that had been popular in the ancient times was absolutely not this powerful in Yi Chun's hands. Even those geniuses who had brought the defensive sword art to greater heights were far inferior to Yi Chun. I somewhat understand what you're feeling now. Demon Flower Emperor looked at Xian Ho and smiled. The more you understand him, the more astonished you will be. Xian Ho also smiled. 64 swords could display the 8 trigrams extermination sword art, while 72 swords could display the Earth Fiend sword art, which was several times more powerful. The further one cultivated the defensive sword art, the harder it would be to cultivate it. Correspondingly, the further one cultivated it, the more powerful it would be. After comprehending thousands of sword arts of the sword world, Yi Chun's defensive sword art had long since reached the realm of 72 swords. Although he hadn't practiced it in time and was a bit rusty, the first wave of attacks was already no small matter. Moreover, the Earth Fiend sword art was a bit different from the 8 trigrams extermination sword art. The Earth Fiend sword art could absorb the Earth Yuan Qi and strengthen itself. In theory, the more Earth Yuan Qi there was, the more powerful the Earth Fiend sword art would be. Of course, this was a bit unrealistic. Not to mention the lack of time to absorb enough Earth Yuan Qi. Yi Chen wouldn't be able to control too much of it. However, with Yi Chen's soul power, he could control a lot of Earth Yuan Qi. It's useless. Yi Chen, your Earth Fiend sword art can't even break my Golden Bell everlasting sword art. How can you hurt me? Su King's demonic godlike body was still straight. The cracks on Golden Bell everlasting sword had also been repaired by him. Of course, although he said so, his chi and blood were boiling. This sword was too powerful. Golden Bell everlasting sword art couldn't counteract all the power, and a part of the power was still transmitted into his body. Let's start now. Yi Chen controlled the huge purple sword and continued to attack Su King. Su King roared and used Golden Bell everlasting sword to the limit. Defense was sometimes a kind of victory. He didn't believe that Yi Chen had endless Zhen Yuan to consume. Without Zhen Yuan, no matter how powerful the sword art was, it would be useless. Clang! The gigantic purple sword brushed past the Golden Bell shadow, leaving a thick sword mark on it. However, the gigantic purple sword did not continue to attack the illusory emperor. Instead, it fell down and disappeared into the void. No one knew where it went. What are you playing at? Why didn't you break the Golden Bell everlasting sword art? Spirit Dan King was puzzled. He didn't think that the huge purple sword could hurt Su King. He clearly had the chance to break the Golden Bell shadow. Su King stood in the Golden Bell shadow with a cold expression. He was on guard against Yi Chen's attack. Although he didn't think that Yi Chen could hurt him, he had to be on guard. Earth Essence Evil Chi, absorb. Su Anho's eyes suddenly lit up. She seemed to have understood something. The huge purple sword didn't disappear for long, only 10 breaths of time. But everyone present felt like decades had passed. Yi Chen, don't waste your time. Su King thought that Yi Chen was stalling for time, but he was patient. What's the rush? This is the real Earth Fiend sword art. As Yi Chen spoke, the huge purple sword appeared. No, it shouldn't be called a huge purple sword, but a huge black sword. Unknowingly, the purple sword had been dyed black. A terrifying evil chi filled the air, forcing ghosts and gods to retreat. There was even a faint black electric current flickering on the surface of the sword. Go! Yi Chen stood in the air and pointed at Su King. Chi! The huge black sword was like a black ray of light, flashing and disappearing. Chapter 979. Danger! The moment the huge black sword appeared, the illusionary emperor immediately felt an indescribable sense of danger. This sense of danger caused his blood and chi to boil and his pupils to shrink. His subconscious told him that it was impossible for him to block this sword with his current Golden Bell inextinguishable body and his sick spiritual body. The power of this sword was more than 2 times stronger than before. It was as if it had undergone a qualitative change. If he didn't have any new tricks up his sleeves, he would be heavily injured even if he didn't die under this sword. Without any hesitation, Su King circulated his Zhen Yuan to the limit. In the depths of his Dantian, the dormant violent dragon tiger Yuan pellet suddenly revolved, and a frightening medicinal power was immediately stimulated, fusing with Su King's Zhen Yuan. Immediately, Su King's Zhen Yuan exploded. This kind of explosion was like igniting a barrel of gunpowder. With a loud bang, Su King's aura blasted a huge hole in the space. Roar! The formidable power caused Su King to roar. He could feel that the explosive power of his Zhen Yuan had multiplied. Although it wasn't a multiplying of his overall strength, it was still frightening. Moreover, his Zhen Yuan had suddenly increased by so much, and his 6-step spirit body seemed to be filled with power. Before this, he hadn't felt the pressure brought by 2,000 years of cultivation base. It was like using an iron barrel to hold water. No matter how violent the water was, it couldn't break through the barrel. But now that the water had turned into gunpowder, it was different. Of course, a 6-step spirit body was only a 6-step spirit body after all. It was far from reaching its limit. Eyes scarlet red, Su King punched toward the huge black sword that was as fast as a black ray. He used his fastest, brilliant light fist instead of great destruction golden flame palm, because the huge black sword's speed was too fast. In almost an instant, the shining fist and the huge black sword collided. An extremely frightening collision sound erupted after a moment of silence. For a moment, everyone couldn't help but seal their ears. No one could describe how frightening this collision sound was, because they couldn't understand what kind of collision of energy could create such a loud sound. If they weren't life and death kings, the sound wave alone would have turned them into a bloody pulp. A life and death king felt a chill near his ear and couldn't help but touch it. Moving closer, he saw that his finger was dyed red. It was blood. He's ridiculously strong. Even the collision of stars can't compare to him. The power of the gigantic black sword was much stronger than what the illusionary emperor had imagined. Not only did the terrifying force not dissipate in the previous collision, it even spread through his fist like lightning. In an instant, the illusionary emperor's right arm exploded into a bloody mist. His internal organs were all shattered, causing his chi and blood to flow in the opposite direction. However, this was not the worst part. The worst part was that after the gigantic black sword turned his right arm into a bloody mist, it continued to attack him like a hot knife through butter. For the first time, Su King was forced to use his space profound movement skill. The space shook, and on the right side of the Void Emperor, there seemed to be an extra mirror. The Void Emperor's figure suddenly split into two, one inside the mirror and one outside the mirror. They were connected, but they didn't seem to be in the same world. It was a very strange feeling, like a person looking into a mirror. Puff! The huge black sword pierced through Su King's figure outside the mirror, and this Su King's figure immediately exploded. However, no blood splashed out. The huge black sword had suddenly used too much force, and with a peerless sword aura, it shot backward. Not good. Behind them, there were about 3 life and death kings in the path of the huge black sword's attack. It should be known that even if the huge black sword's speed was extremely fast, the aftershock would still be no small matter. A deviation of several hundred meters could still heavily injure them. Therefore, the two in front frantically dodged, pulling the deviation to more than 1,000 meters. In such a short period of time, they could only do this much. As for the last person, he didn't even have the time to dodge, and seemed to be thinking about something. The two in front felt their breathing stagnate, and their chi and blood churned. Fortunately, they pulled away twice the distance, so they were fine. However, the last person didn't expect such a change, and his eyes opened wide. His identity was actually Sky King. Sky King felt extremely wronged. Yichen's Earth Fiend sword art made him somewhat unwilling. Therefore, he was somewhat distracted. He didn't expect that Su King would use a mirror-like space profound movement skill, diverting the disaster to him. The huge black sword couldn't restrain itself, and directly flew toward him. The two in front were several hundred meters away from the huge black sword's attack path, and he was standing right in the middle of it. Moreover, he was distracted, so how could he dodge? I can't accept this. At this moment, Sky King felt incomparably sullen. He would rather die fair and square at Yi Chen's hands, letting the latter know who he was and that he had sent people to kill him. It was still better than dying like this. This kind of death was completely collateral damage, without any value or meaning. Bang! The huge black sword's momentum was incomparably fast. It instantly pierced through Sky King's body, and his pseudo-supreme grade battle armor was pierced through. Sky King lowered his head to look at the bloody hole in his chest. He seemed to want to say something, but just as he opened his mouth a little, his body exploded, turning into a bloody mist. He, who hadn't reached blood rebirth, died cleanly. Mirror clone. As for killing Sky King, Yi Chun didn't care at all. On the other hand, Su King's mirror clone had opened his eyes. These titled monarchs proficient in space profound couldn't be underestimated. The space profound martial skills they had created were simply too varied. In comparison, Yi Chun felt that his space profound martial skills were much simpler. They were only used for attacking or moving, and didn't have any other types of space profound martial skills. Come back. With a wave of his hand, the huge black sword drew a black arc and returned to Yi Chen's body. As if it had used up most of its power, the huge black sword wasn't as black as before, and a purple color began to be exposed. This was a sign that the Earth Origin evil chi was about to be exhausted. The Earth Fiend sword art could absorb a large amount of Earth Origin evil chi and fuse it with one's body. After being strengthened by the sword art, its power would explosively increase. It wasn't as simple as just compressing it. Before, the huge purple sword had disappeared because Yi Chun had controlled it to dive into the seabed and absorb the Earth Origin evil chi. Although the void could also absorb Earth Origin evil chi, the amount was too little and couldn't compare to the seabed or the Earth. The power of the Earth Fiend sword art didn't disappoint Yi Chun. Even if Su King had activated the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill's medicinal power, he still couldn't block the attack of this sword art. In the end, he had to rely on Space profound martial arts to get out of the situation, but this had also led to Een Sky King's death. What level of power is this? The power of the huge black sword shocked and terrified everyone. With a 6-tier spirit body, the invincible void battle technique, and the activation of the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill's medicinal power, Su King's battle power was already infinitely close to 6 stars. He was definitely an overlord among the 5-star overlords, the top kind. However, under Yi Chen's sword, he still couldn't withstand a single blow. Could it be that this sword already had the lethality of 6 stars and had broken through to another realm? Everyone guessed correctly. This sword did indeed have a lethality of 6 stars. Among the Imperial sword arts, the Earth Fiend sword art was a very unique sword art. In theory, its power could be increased infinitely as long as there was enough time. Therefore, even if Yi Chen's strength reached an extremely high level in the future, the Earth Fiend sword art would still be useful. If there was enough time, the power of the Earth Fiend sword art could even surpass the 9 return to 1 sword art that could only be performed with 81 swords at the same time. Of course, that would require too much time. Moreover, the weakness of the Earth Fiend sword art wasn't small, and that was that it required the Earth Origin evil chi. Without the Earth Origin evil chi, the Earth Fiend sword art was only a few times more powerful than the 8 trigrams extermination sword art, and was comparable to merciless water and fire. In short, the Earth Fiend sword art was a sword art that needed to accumulate power. Go down. Seeing the huge black sword in this state, Yi Chen knew that with the current Earth Fiend sword art, it wouldn't be able to pose a threat to Su King. He moved his finger, and the huge black sword once again escaped into the void and disappeared. Yi Chen, how could Su King give Yi Chen time to accumulate power? At this moment, not only did he execute the invincible void battle technique, the medicinal power of the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill was also activated, and his battle power increased by another level. Boom! Su King, whose eyes were blazing with red light, charged towards Yi Chen and struck out a palm. Even without the Earth Fiend sword art, you can't do anything to me. The iron-blooded silver-blue sword was unsheathed, and Yi Chen slashed out. The jade-green sword screen was still as violent as before, as though it could split the heavens and earth apart. Rumble! The shockwave swept out in all directions. Su King's body slightly swayed, but he didn't take a single step back. On the other hand, Yi Chen was blown away for the first time. However, apart from his blood and chi boiling and a trace of paleness on his face, he didn't seem to have suffered any injuries. In fact, if it weren't for the pseudo-extreme grade sword, the iron-blooded silver-blue sword, Su King might not have been able to gain the upper hand. The violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill had increased his power by a level. However, the merciless water and fire was a peak profound sword art after all, and it wasn't something to be trifled with. Yi Chen was at a disadvantage because his sword was a level lower than the Sky Scorpio sword. Perhaps it was the undefeatable void battle art that made Su King's battle intense surge, or the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill's powerful medicinal power that made him go berserk, but Su King didn't stop attacking Yi Chen. The storm-like attacks caused the sun and moon to lose their luster, and the heaven and earth to flicker. The seawater below raised sky-reaching waves and flashed with lightning. Yi Chen kept retreating. The current Su King was too powerful, and his battle power was way above his own. Not only was his Zhen Yuan flowing out like water, but his chest was also starting to feel suffocated. It was a sign that he was about to be injured. However, the smile on Yi Chen's face was getting brighter and brighter. I've accumulated enough. Huh. After being blown away hundreds of li again, Yi Chen roared and raised his sword finger. A huge black sword with a horrifying aura appeared, and a powerful sword aura spread out. Su King still had his reason, and immediately pulled away. His figure started to drift, which was a sign that he was about to use a space, profound movement art. You don't have the chance anymore. The silver vertical eye between Yi Chen's brows opened, and a silver light beam entered Su King's soul sea. The soul light couldn't possibly hurt Su King's soul, but it was enough to make him dizzy for a moment. After all, the Earth Fiend sword art was a high-grade sword art among the Imperial sword arts, and its speed was faster than any of Yi Chen's sword arts. It's time to end this battle. The silver light beam shot out after the black sword. The speed of the silver light beam was so fast that it arrived before the black sword. The black sword followed closely behind and fiercely bombarded the Void Emperor's chest. Before the silver light beam hit the Void Emperor's chest, a powerful sword power had already penetrated through the Void Emperor's back. It could be seen how powerful this sword attack was. Chapter 980. Boom! It was as if a black and gold sun had exploded. The intense sound wave was accompanied by a dazzling light. For a moment, everyone felt like they had lost their hearing and sight. There were no longer any shadows in the world. There was only a strong light and a crazy and brutal impact force everywhere. A peak-grade battle armor was, after all, a peak-grade battle armor. Under the bombardment of the black sword, Su King's golden battle armor didn't shatter, it only dented a little. However, Su King's body wasn't as tough as the peak-grade battle armor. Countless cracks appeared on his body before it exploded into thousands of pieces. Even if he had a 6th-rank spirit body, when facing an attack that was several times stronger than his body's limit, his body would shatter into pieces. Unless Su King was a body-refining monarch, he wouldn't be able to block this attack with his terrifying strength and 6th-rank spirit body. Of course, it was inevitable that he would be injured. How could a 6-star attack be taken lightly? After throwing out this sword attack, the evil power of the black huge sword had been completely used up, and it had turned into a huge purple sword. Bang! Inside the golden armor, the only piece of flesh started wriggling at an extremely fast speed. Within a blink of an eye, it had turned into the Surreal King. He raised his fist as fast as lightning and punched away the purple huge sword that had lost its momentum. The illusionary emperor was an extremely powerful titled monarch. His immortal body had already reached the realm of rebirth from a single drop of blood. With the protection of the golden armor, he was able to leave a piece of flesh intact. That piece of flesh was the flesh on his abdomen, which contained his dantian. Therefore, even though the illusionary emperor's body had been destroyed, he still retained most of his cultivation and could still fight. Yi Chen, I'll remember this. The surreal emperor's voice was extremely cold. He took a deep look at Yi Chen before flashing his body, turning into a beam of light and disappearing into the surreal. Su King had been defeated. After retrieving the purple sword, Yi Chen didn't chase. With Su King's comprehension of space, there was no point in chasing. No matter what, he had won this battle. Victory! The Spirit Pill King let out a sigh of relief, which was then followed by ecstasy. Spirit Dan King was not the only one who was ecstatic. On Yi Chen's side, everyone smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. They were the weaker side and could only fight for a short period of time. However, if the battle dragged on, someone would definitely die. As life and death kings, no one was willing to die at this moment. They still had a long road ahead of them, and dying would not be worth it. Let's go. After Su King left, the Heaven Void King was the first to retreat, taking with him a few of the Void Gate's kings and some kings who were on good terms with the Void Gate. Why is he so strong? This is so annoying. Zhan Tianxiang Emperor was the second to retreat. He did not have the means to resist Yi Chen's Earth Fiend sword technique. In comparison, He was likely to be the first to die when facing Yi Qin's Earth Fiend sword technique. This had nothing to do with combat strength. Yin Qing Xian, it seems like we can only fight next time. Air Emperor also cast a deep glance at Yi Chun. This genius of the past had finally matured. Apart from the elusive 6-star kings, he was an invincible existence. His every word and action could change the direction of Elysium. From now on, nobody would dare to go against him. Even if he was like Su King, who had the ability to come and go as he pleased, he was not willing to fight to the end. Xianhou sighed with emotion. Perhaps next time, we will fight side by side. There were no eternal enemies. For the sake of Elysium, there would be a time when they would fight side by side. Let's hope so. Air Emperor's body rippled and disappeared. Damn it! Where will my old ancestor put his face? Black Dragon Old Ancestor left hatefully. He had made up his mind to never provoke Yi Chun again, treating him as if he did not exist. In the end, only Azure Cloud Sword Emperor was left among the heavyweights. Azure Cloud Sword Emperor, we are both swordsmen. I feel that we should aim our sharp swords at the real enemy. Don't you think so? Yi Chun smiled faintly. Fist is the hard truth. From now on, everything you say is the truth. Whether I refute it or not is meaningless. I hope you are right. Azure Cloud Sword Emperor also turned around and left without any hesitation. With the heavyweights gone, there was no reason for the remaining shrimp soldiers and crab generals to stay. They seemed to have the advantage in numbers, but without a powerful title monarch, they had no chance of winning. Not only did they need soldiers, but they also needed powerful generals. Generals and soldiers were inseparable. In just a short while, the 200 people from before had all left. The tense atmosphere above the chaotic demonic ocean also disappeared as if it had never existed. Phew, it's over. Thank you, everyone. Letting out a breath of turbid air, Yi Chun turned around and cupped his fists at the crowd. Yi Chun, you are treating me like an outsider. In fact, we didn't do anything. You are the one who contributed the most. That's right. Without you, it would be useless for us to come, ending this incomparable battle by himself. Even if he couldn't be compared to the ancients, at least in this era, he was already a legendary figure. All good things must come to an end. The calamity of the alien races was imminent, and everyone had their own things to do. It was impossible for them to chat here. After the 100 people got to know each other, they left. In the end, only Yi Chun, Xianhou, Demon Flower Emperor, Innate Demon Monarch, and Spiritual Dan King were left. I suspect that this war is a trap, Demon Flower Emperor suddenly said. Xianhou nodded. The human demon village is the secret of your race. Only the clan leaders know about it. The possibility of outsiders knowing about it is very low. Maybe the demons have already infiltrated the kings of Elysium. They want to use this opportunity to know the location of the human demon village. They want to unseal the human demon village and let the demon ancestral tree return to the human world. Unfortunately, I can't stop them from seeing the human demon village. Demon Flower Emperor sighed. The human demon village was just an excuse. However, Demon Flower Emperor also knew that if she didn't summon the human demon village, the war wouldn't end so easily. Even if Yi Chun came, it wouldn't be possible. After all, before this, no one knew that the demon ancestral tree was sealed in the human demon village. They thought it was the hiding place of the demons. Even I don't know about the human demon village. It's very secretive. Innate Demon Emperor also nodded. Yi Chun said, the last seal of the human demon village was placed by Senior Yuan Emperor. Coincidentally, I have a clone of Senior Yuan Emperor here. If someone touches the human demon village, Senior Yuan Emperor will sense it. At that time, I will go and stop him. At least, he won't have the chance to unseal it. What? You have a clone of Senior Yuan Emperor here? The four were shocked. Worthy of being the last true monarch. Even after dying for so many years, he still has such a powerful trump card. This way, I have some hope for the foreign race's calamity. If Senior Yuan Emperor has a trump card, maybe the other monarchs also have trump card. They won't want Elysium to be enslaved by the foreign races. The monarchs mentioned by Spirit Dan King were peerless characters that could leave their marks on the Emperor's scar steel, not the monarchs of this era. Placing our hopes on others is not something we should do. Before that, we have to increase our cultivation. In terms of strength, the foreign race's calamity might not be as strong as the ancient times. But don't forget, the current Elysium is in a weakened state. Not to mention 7-star battle prowess. Even 6-star battle prowess is scarce, and all of them are missing. Shinho reminded, what Shinho said is right. It is better to rely on ourselves than others. Unless those monarchs come back to life, they won't be able to play a leading role. How could innate Demon Emperor not understand this logic? Hee hee. Spirit Dan King smiled and said, my strength is too weak, so I won't be of much use. However, my alchemy skills should be able to help you a lot. In this Pill King convention, I've purchased a lot of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. I'm sure I'll be able to refine some useful pills. Spirit Dan King's value did not lie in his battle prowess, but in his alchemy skills. He could even refine one of the 10 great ancient miraculous pellets, the violent tiger dragon yuan pellet. This kind of achievement was even stronger than 10 ordinary monarchs. Before leaving, Demon Flower Emperor said to Yi Chun, Qingqing has already entered life and death realm, but she can't come out yet. She is currently familiarizing herself with the abilities she inherited from the demon's bloodline. When she comes out, she'll give you a huge surprise. Murong has entered life and death realm. Yi Chun turned his head. Right? I didn't expect that the demon she inherited would be so powerful, to the point that her coming out of seclusion has been delayed again and again. But don't worry, her current strength has already reached the level of a peak king. In my opinion, her aptitude is even stronger than the majority of demons. She's almost at the level of high-grade demons. Demons were a race with a strict hierarchy. Different from Elysium, demons not only spoke with strength, but also with the nobility of their bloodline. Yicha knew a little about this. All right, many thanks to Senior Demon Flower Emperor for teaching Murong with all your heart. With Murong entering life and death realm, Yi Chun heaved a sigh of relief. In the great calamity of the outsiders, without the strength of a life and death king, it would be hard for one to protect oneself. Everyone left. The chaos demonic sea was empty, and the sea breeze blew gently. I didn't expect the human demon village to be hidden in the depths of the void. It can only be summoned with a special seal. Unfortunately, this is only for the people of Elysium. We demons have an innate affinity with the demon ancestral tree. As long as we spend some time, we can easily find the human demon village. In the center of the enormous palace was a several dozen meters long table. Blood-red phantoms were sitting beside the table. The one sitting at the head of the table spoke. The other red phantoms said, although we know the exact location of the human demon village, that Yi Chun is an obstacle that we can't ignore. His growth is too fast. Therefore, we have to speed up the process of unsealing lords. Before he becomes even stronger, we have to start a war and sweep through the whole of Elysium. I heard that Lord Tian Xie of Evil Spirit Race has successfully escaped. Perhaps we can contact him. Chapter 981. Before returning to the Yi family, Yi Chun paid a visit to the South Shallow Sea Alliance. Ever since the yellow-robed old monster was killed by him, the leader of the alliance was none other than the leader of the water ape race, Sun Tai. Sun Tai was, after all, a new demonic beast king, barely a mid-step king. Before Sun Shaojin matured, the water ape race did not have the power to suppress the other forces of the alliance. If not for Yi Chun, Sun Tai would still be locked up in a secret prison. This time, Yi Chun planned to see if there were any bad signs. Regarding Sun Tai becoming the leader, it was impossible for the other deputy leaders to not have any thoughts about it. Perhaps Yi Chun had underestimated his power. The South Shallow Sea Alliance was in good order, and there were no problems. The other forces did not show any sign of disobeying Sun Tai, either. Instead, they were doing their best, just like before. The alliance is fine. Although a few deputy leaders are not convinced by me, they know their limits and do not dare to act recklessly. On the other hand, The Black Evil Island and the demonic god cult are a bit unstable. Recently, they even robbed a lot of our resources. Sun Tai told Yi Chun about the recent events. No worries, I will make them behave. As soon as Yi Chun finished, he disappeared into the surreal space. The demonic god cult was a tyrant of the South Deep Sea. Its power was just below the chaotic demon ocean, on par with the Black Evil Island. In the sky, Yi Chun's figure appeared. Without any nonsense, Yi Chun directly performed his Earth Fiend sword art. The huge purple sword dived into the seabed, and when it came back up, it turned completely black. A horrifying evil chi spread out, and its sword aura soared into the sky. Earth Demonic Emperor, it seems like last time was not enough to scare you. As he spoke, Yi Chun pointed out his sword finger, and the huge black sword attacked toward the island of the demonic god cult. Crack! The demonic god cult was protected by layers of formations, but under the huge black sword, it was like tofu, easily pierced through. The huge island was cut in half, and the seawater surged. Next, the Earth Fiend Island also faced Yi Chun's attack. Many experts on the island were frightened, and no one dared to come out. In a palace at the bottom of the sea, 3 figures stood there. This Yi Chun is so arrogant. The one who spoke was the Earth Demon Sovereign. However, at this moment, the Earth Demon Sovereign's body was emitting a thick evil aura, and his face was filled with malice. Let him be happy for a while longer. When our army sweeps through the whole of Elysium, he won't even have time to cry. The Black Evil Emperor was also full of evil energy. Don't underestimate him. In terms of growth rate, this person is the first I've seen in my life. He might become a huge obstacle for us in the future. The Golden Turtle Great Ancestor, who had to conceal his evil aura, said, "It's a pity that we haven't familiarized ourselves with this body. Otherwise, with our strength, the 3 of us would be enough to kill him. There's no rush. With Lord Tianxia around, we will definitely obtain the final victory in this battle. At that time, our evil spirit race will be able to get at least 30% of Elysium. How many resources will that be?" After spending a week's time, Yi Chun finally completely restored his true essence. It's time to head to the King Conferment Hall to accept my title. The time limit for the King Conferment Hall to accept his title was 1 year. If he didn't go within a year, the King Conferment Hall's Hall Spirit would directly teleport him over. Now, 1 year was almost up. The Tianwu region's King Conferment Mountain was a huge mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall. The peak of the huge mountain was flat, as if it had been carved by a knife, and an ancient and majestic square hall sat on it. Buzz! The space rippled slightly, and Yi Chun arrived at the square of the King Conferment Hall. He raised his head and saw a plaque on the door of the hall. There were 3 ancient words written on the plaque, King Conferment Hall. These 3 words were not only written with great force, but they also contained a boundless aura. Even if it was Yi Chun, he would be greatly inferior when facing these 3 words. It was as if he wasn't facing 3 words, but a mountain that could never be climbed, a vast and boundless starry sky. What a powerful will. Yi Chun didn't know who wrote these 3 words, but he was sure that the person who wrote these 3 words had also infused his own will into them. Anyone who came to the King Conferment Hall would feel reverence in their heart, not daring to show the slightest bit of disrespect. As if sensing Yi Chun's arrival, the door of the King Conferment Hall automatically opened, and the lights inside lit up one after another. Letting out a breath, Yi Chun walked in. Creak! The door of the King Conferment Hall closed. Is that the King Conferment Pillar? Yi Chun didn't care about the door closing behind him. His gaze fell on a bronze pillar at the center of the hall. On it, there were many titles from top to bottom, densely packed and innumerable. And the first title was not Ancient Emperor. Ancient Emperor was the first title monarch, but not the first life and death king. I've been waiting for a long time. Finally, one is here. A tender voice suddenly rang out. Who? Yi Chun had no idea where the voice came from. I'm here. At the top of the King Conferment Pillar, a petite figure jumped down. On a closer look, it was just a child about 10 years old. He had red lips, white teeth, and big eyes. You're the palace spirit? Yi Chun probed. Indeed. The palace spirit had a proud look. I'm Yi Chun, and I'm here to be conferred a king. Yi Chun found it a bit funny. This palace spirit actually had the appearance of child. He didn't believe that it was natural. Of course I know. The palace spirit sized up Yi Chun and nodded with maturity. Your aura is very powerful. Very good. Let me ask you, do you want to be conferred a king casually, or do you want to compete for the Sword King title? I think you have the qualifications to compete for it, although it won't be easy and the chances of failure are very high. With my current strength, I have a high chance of failure? Yi Chun asked. His combat strength was already the limit of a 5-star overlord. If he had time to accumulate his strength, he could even burst out the combat strength of a 6-star overlord. The palace spirit rolled its eyes. You think that you can compete for the title of Sword King just because you are strong? Stop dreaming. Competing for the title of Sword King doesn't depend on your combat strength, but your understanding of Sword Dao. At that time, you will realize that you can't even release your killing move, because you won't have time to accumulate your killing move. You can only use ordinary moves to fight, and you won't be able to release your soul power either. A person's life is very long. At the beginning, some people have great opportunities, while others have shallow opportunities. At this time, although those with great opportunities are stronger, it doesn't mean that those with shallow opportunities are weaker than them. Let me show you some scenes first, and you will know how strong the Sword King's achievements are. The temple spirit waved its hand, and a screen of light appeared in front of the conferred king pillar. On the screen of light, there were two people, both very young. One had an ordinary appearance and a calm expression, while the other had an incomparably sharp aura. Each of them held an iron sword in their hands. Very strong. At first glance, Yi Chun knew that these two people were very strong. But for some unknown reason, his gaze was fixed on the ordinary-looking young man. This person's aura wasn't obvious, but he didn't give people a feeling of mediocrity. He was like a peerless treasure sword, hidden in its scabbard, without a trace of sword chi leaking out. As for the young man with soaring aura, his entire body gave off a feeling of sharpness that could cut through one's skin. He was like the incarnation of a sword. His aura was a sword, his hair was a sword, his gaze was a sword, and his fluttering clothes were a sword. Everything that was related to him was a sword. If someone said that he was weak, Yi Chun would be the first to not believe it. Both of them are very strong. That ordinary-looking one should be an ancient Sword King. I wonder who the young man with soaring aura is. Yi Chun thought. On the light screen, both sides clashed. The first to attack was the young man with soaring aura. He waved his iron sword, and with a flash of his body, he slashed down. This sword was incomparably decisive, as if it could cut through anything. Moreover, Yi Chun discovered that his movements were too fast, as if it was in a flash. Could this be related to what the palace spirit said? You don't even have time to release your killing move. Ding, dang, dang. The next scene caused Yi Chun's eyes to narrow. 3 swords, just 3 swords, and the young man with soaring aura was defeated. His entire body was cut in half. The ordinary-looking young man didn't attack, but once he did, his opponent's aura was completely taken away by him. The last sword was incomparably stunning. When the sword was unleashed, the world lost its color. An ordinary sword move actually had such a stunning feeling. How is it? The palace spirit asked with a smile. Who is the Sword King's opponent? Yi Chun asked. The hall spirit replied. He's also a very famous swordsman called the Heavenly Sword King. Due to the rules, I can't show you the most powerful image. However, the Heavenly Sword King is considered to be in the top 20 among the swordsmen since ancient times. However, in the hands of the Sword King, he couldn't even block 3 sword strikes. If you don't have the confidence, don't challenge him. Without confidence, you will definitely lose. This is for sure. The palace spirit yawned. It doesn't matter whether I have the confidence or not. What's important is that I don't think I will lose. Yi Chun's eyes burst with the long-lost fighting spirit. To be able to fight with the strongest and most amazing swordsman since ancient times was a rare opportunity. It might only happen once. Interesting. Then, I will send you to fight with him. The palace spirit stretched its palm towards Yi Chun, and then it grabbed a human-shaped light shadow, sending it into the suspended light screen. The world was spinning. Yi Chun didn't expect the palace spirit to be so powerful. It helped him condense a consciousness and sent him to an unknown place. He simply couldn't fight back at all. This was a bamboo forest. When the wind blew, the bamboo leaves rustled. When his feet landed on the ground, Yi Chen's heart calmed down. On the opposite side, a figure walked over slowly. Although his appearance couldn't be seen clearly from his calm aura, he was naturally the ancient Sword King, the strongest swordsman that every swordsman wanted to defeat. In the king's bestowal palace, the yawning palace spirit's expression turned serious. To be honest, Yi Chun was one of the top swordsmen he had seen. Among all the swordsmen since ancient times, he could be ranked in the top 3. Otherwise, he wouldn't talk so much nonsense with Yi Chun and even let him watch the battle between Heaven Sword King and the Ancient Sword King. An ordinary swordsman wasn't qualified to enjoy such treatment. Yi Chun, regardless of whether you win or lose, this battle will be passed down to the future generations. The temple spirit picked up a fruit and took a bite, muttering unclearly. Chapter 982. In the bamboo forest, the Sword King slowly walked over with a calm expression. When they were about 30 steps apart, the Sword King stopped and stared at Yi Chun with clear eyes, not saying a word. Yi Chun also didn't speak. At this moment, the Sword King was the Sword King, but not the Sword King at the same time. The Sword King should be a clone of the palace spirit. It didn't have any thoughts, only instincts. Puff, puff. Almost at the same time, 2 iron swords fell from the sky, stabbing at the feet of Yi Chun and the Sword King respectively. The swords sank half a foot into the ground, their hilts still trembling. Yi Chun, if you can defeat the Sword King, I don't mind telling you the true cultivation method of life and death realm. If not, I'll have to wait until you're even stronger before teaching it to you. The palace spirit sat on a stone chair, swinging its legs. The Sword King and Yi Chun both pulled out their iron swords and calmly looked at each other. Neither made the first move, as if they were observing each other and waiting for the right moment. Huff! At this moment, a gust of wind blew past, rolling up countless bamboo leaves on the ground like flying swords. Hum! Hum! With a sword hum, the two charged at each other like lightning, swinging their iron swords. So fast, Yi Chun felt that his movement speed was twice as fast as usual, and his sword swinging speed was also twice as fast. The difference between the two was almost 3 times. No wonder the palace spirit said that he wouldn't even have the time to prepare a killing move. If he was even a little bit slower, he would be killed without any leeway. Yi Chun's powerful soul power played a crucial role at this moment, allowing him to adapt to such speed in a short time. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, he would be at a disadvantage. What baffled him was that the Sword King didn't seem to be able to adapt to such speed at first, but he soon adjusted as well. Seems like this is the palace spirit's doing. Yi Chun thought inwardly. Clang! The iron swords collided with each other, and sparks flew everywhere like a fairy scattering flowers. Some of the bamboo leaves that came into contact with the sparks were immediately set ablaze, like burning moths circling in the air. Borrowing the powerful recoil, Yi Chun flew back, his blue robes fluttering in the wind. The next moment, he landed on the ground and rushed forward with an even faster speed, stabbing out with his iron sword. Sword King's reaction was not any slower than Yi Chun's. His figure slightly swayed, dodging Yi Chun's lightning-fast sword strike. His iron sword slashed diagonally at Yi Chun's face. Rip! A strand of black hair was cut off. At this critical moment, Yi Chun tilted his head to the Sword King's face. Without protective Zhen Yuan and soul power cannot be released. This kind of battle is just like fighting in the sword world. However, compared to the sword world, this place is much faster and more dangerous. Otherwise, he might not have been able to battle against the Sword King. Since ancient times, it was not without reason that the Sword King was able to occupy the position of the strongest sword artist. If he were not ridiculously powerful, he would have long been pulled down from the peak by the later generations. However, it's still not enough. If I want to defeat the Sword King, my current foundation is far from enough. Ding ding dang dang. In the blink of an eye, the two of them swung their swords continuously, exchanging hundreds of blows. Yi Chun could feel that he was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. Every move of the Sword King was flawless. This was the realm of having no sword in the hand, but having a sword in the heart. However, it seemed that his opponent was a level higher than him, and was already close to the peak of this realm. The realm of having no sword in hand and sword in heart is truly a sight to behold. Even the Heavenly Sword King hasn't reached this realm. It would be strange if he could withstand 3 sword strikes. The Temple Spirit was not surprised by this result. However, reaching life and death realm within a year is not easy. Adding the Sword King and Yi Chun, there are only 4 of them, all things as swords. Borrowing the momentum to retreat, Yi Chun suddenly formed a sword with his left hand and pointed at the approaching Sword King. Chi 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 chi. In the air, the spinning bamboo leaves were like flying swords as they shot out. Neither of them had protective Zhen Yuan, so the lethality of the bamboo leaves could not be underestimated. If they were hit, a flaw would appear. All things as swords. However, Yi Chun's plan was shattered. The Sword King could also use all things as swords. In this place, one couldn't release soul power. Therefore, it was impossible to use soul power to move the bamboo leaves. Yi Chun relied on his powerful sword intent to move the bamboo leaves. Apart from this, these flying sword-like bamboo leaves also contained his comprehension of sword Dao. Even if an ordinary sword artist could use their sword intent to move the bamboo leaves as swords, their lethality would be limited. This was because the bamboo leaves were too fragile and couldn't withstand the infusion of sword intent. Only those with high attainments in sword Dao could truly use all things as swords. This was something that Yi Chun had comprehended after comprehending the essence of several thousand sword arts of the sword world. Bamboo leaves exploded one after another. Yi Chun's bamboo leaves were indestructible and contained the destruction sword intent. On the other hand, the Sword King's bamboo leaves were indestructible and contained the immortal sword intent. As soon as the two collided, they were evenly matched. Neither could do anything to the other. Merciless water and fire have only allowed me to comprehend the essence of several thousand sword arts. However, I have yet to comprehend the essence of the later ones. I hope I can use this battle to improve. Yi Chun had only comprehended the sword arts below the 10th level of the sword world. There were even more profound sword arts above the 10th level. It was easy to comprehend 1 or 2, but to comprehend all of them was not something that could be done in a short period of time. If he could do it, he would have already gained the upper hand. Not giving up on using all things as swords, Yi Chun continued to control more bamboo leaves to attack the Sword King. As for his real body, he was shuttling through the bamboo leaves to fight against the Sword King. He wanted to make the environment even worse and use it to break through. At this moment, his soul power, which was higher than the Sword King's, was the key to his victory. The trajectory of the bamboo leaves had almost become his instinct. He knew how to dodge and how to evade in advance. Not bad. You know how to use your advantage. The palace spirit nodded. An advantage was an advantage. If you didn't use your advantage, it wouldn't be called fair, it would be called idiocy. Everyone had an advantage. If you didn't use your advantage, it would be the same as giving others a chance. The Sword King was worthy of being the strongest sword artist since ancient times. Even in such a bad situation, he still had an unstoppable aura. When those bamboo leaves approached his body, they would be guided by a sword aura and attack back at Yi Chun. Only a small portion of the bamboo leaves could be of some use, but it made it much easier for the Sword King to dodge. The sound of metal swords clashing was endless. The two of them moved so fast that it was like a fast camera. It was impossible to tell who was who. Only a flash of sword light could be seen. Puff! A wisp of blood blossomed. One of them was injured. Their figures crisscrossed, and Yi Chun opened a distance of dozens of meters. He looked down at his waist, where there was a thin sword mark. In the thousands of exchanges, Yi Chun hadn't been hit once. However, the Sword King's battle power had reached an unimaginable level. The last sword, which the Sword King didn't think would touch him, had touched him. If it wasn't for his fast reaction, he would have been cut in half at the waist and suffered a crushing defeat. This is the understanding of the Sword Tao. Yi Chun thought back to that sword attack in his mind. That sword should still be in the no sword in the hand, sword in the heart, but since it could make him make a prediction mistake, it should have touched the next realm. As for what the next realm was, Yi Chun naturally knew. It's really dangerous. Unknowingly, Yi Chun's mental power had multiplied. Even he himself didn't notice it. The pressure brought by the Sword King had aroused his soul power bit by bit. In the past, although Yi Chun's soul power was 10 times that of ordinary life and death kings, it was only in terms of quantity. In terms of intensity, it didn't increase much. Intensity was more important than quantity. It meant that he could bring out the effects of his soul power to a higher degree and comprehend things faster. A thought was too short, and Yi Chun didn't have much time to think before the Sword King's attack arrived. Puff! Puff! The injuries on Yi Chun's body grew more and more numerous. Blood dyed his clothes red, and he was in danger of being killed at any moment. However, every time, Yi Chun would always be able to avert the danger, displaying his superb willpower and unshakable confidence. The palace spirit was somewhat surprised. To be honest, he didn't have much confidence in Yi Chun. He was well aware of the Sword King's strength. This was a person favored by fate, but also abandoned by fate. The fact that Yi Chun could persist until now already made him very satisfied. As far as he was concerned, Yi Chun would be defeated within this period of time. However, he keenly noticed that the wounds on Yi Chun's body were becoming smaller and smaller. Some were merely grazed by the sword qi, not even touching the skin. What did this mean? It meant that Yi Chun was progressing through battle. It wasn't strange to improve in battle, but it depended on who the opponent was. To be able to improve under the Sword King's sharp attacks wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Furthermore, he had increased the speed of the two of them. An ordinary person wouldn't even have time to react. So how could they have the thought to make a breakthrough? Yi Chun's eyes grew brighter and brighter. The iron sword in the opponent's hand was no longer untraceable, but traceable. Moreover, he could barely dodge that incredible sword. The Sword King seemed to sense that Yi Chun had become stronger. His attacks became sharper and sharper, and the realm of his swordsmanship increased bit by bit until it reached a limit. Each sword became more unpredictable and couldn't be calculated with common sense. This was Yi Chun. If it was another swordsman, they wouldn't even be able to block a single sword. Kill! An emotionless roar resounded. The Sword King's essence, qi, and spirit erupted as he waved his sword at the peak. Under this sword, Yi Chun's soul seemed to be taken away. Whatever swordsmanship, whatever sword Tao, it was all extracted. Boom! A ball of lightning exploded in his mind, and Yi Chun suddenly felt enlightened. So this is the realm of no sword in the hand and no sword in the heart. Thank you. The iron sword in his hand casually waved, and the Sword King's head flew. At the same time, Yi Chun's left arm was also cut off. Although he had comprehended to a higher realm, it was still after the opponent waved his sword. Chapter 983. Powerful. As the palace spirit of conferred King Palace, it had seen all sorts of geniuses. Although Yi Chun was exceptionally talented, he might not be the first. However, the fact that he could improve in the battle against the Sword King showed that his talent was the most frightening. Nobody knew where his limits were. Even in a desperate situation, he could turn the tables. In other words, in terms of survivability, if Yi Chun said he was second, nobody would dare say they were first. At most, they would be on par with him. The palace spirit's big eyes brightened. No sword in hand, no sword in heart. After defeating the Sword King, Yi Chun's emotions surged, unable to calm down for a long time. Through the battle against the Sword King, he had comprehended the next realm of Sword Tao. No sword in hand, no sword in heart. Although he had only comprehended it and had not truly reached it, at least he had taken a step forward. It was no longer vague, invisible, and untouchable. No sword in hand meant that the sword arts had no flaws. No sword in heart meant that the heart also had no flaws. When the two were superimposed, it would be truly flawless. On the other hand, the opponent would be full of flaws. Even a sword king who was close to this realm would have to bear a grudge under this flawless sword. Many thanks. Regardless of whether the sword king was conscious or not, Yi Chun had to express his thanks. If not for the sword king's last sword strike, he wouldn't have comprehended no sword in hand and no sword in heart so quickly. Come out. The palace spirit waved its hand, and a human silhouette flew out from the light screen, merging with Yi Chen's body. In the next moment, Yi Chen woke up. Congratulations. You're the first sword artist to truly defeat the Sword King. The palace spirit chuckled. Yi Chen opened his eyes. The ancients have already passed away. The one I defeated was merely another him, not the real one. Neither arrogant nor rash. No wonder you can have your current accomplishments. The palace spirit nodded in satisfaction. Do you want to know the true cultivation method of life and death realm? True cultivation method? Yi Chen revealed a puzzled expression, as well as a trace of palpitation. The palace spirit explained, don't you feel that the cultivation of life and death realm has many flaws? Why is it that there are early, mid, and late stages before life and death realm? As for cultivation base, it's not a realm at all. It's merely a matter of accumulation. As long as the gap isn't too big, it doesn't affect one's battle strength much. The greatest benefit of a high cultivation base is that one's battle strength can last. Moreover, after reaching life and death realm, of your Zhen Yuan recovery speed is too slow. This is very abnormal. Your supreme grade spirit stones and treasures are mostly used to recover Zhen Yuan, which is a waste. Then, what is the true cultivation method of life and death realm? Then, of life and of. What is the true cultivation method of life and of? The temple spirit didn't answer directly. He took a bite of the fruit and said, your current star-level combat power is actually something I came up with when I was bored. What is your current combat power? His overall battle prowess should be that of a 5-star overlord. If he were to unleash his full power, he would be able to reach 6-star. The temple spirit's expression showed that it was as expected. There's a big difference, but it's not too ridiculous. Because I'm the one who made this, I have set of the most standard identification methods. In my eyes, your overall combat power should be at the peak of 5 stars. If you go all out, you'll only be a 5-star overlord. You haven't reached 6 stars yet. Deviations? Yi Chen listened quietly. Before Dragon King challenged the path of death, he came to my place and asked me a few things. At that time, his battle power was mid-5-star, the most standard mid-5-star battle power. When he goes all out, he can even increase by 2 small levels, reaching the peak of 5 stars. According to your judgment, he is a high 5-star battle power, and when he goes all out, he is a 5-star overlord. The reason why there is a deviation is because everyone subconsciously judges the strength of others based on their own strength. Without a proper system, it's very normal for there to be a deviation. Moreover, this star battle power is something I made based on the situation in Elysium. Outside of Elysium, it has no use in judging. There are all kinds of races in the outside world. The star battle power judgment system works here, but it won't work on other races. Most importantly, although my star battle power system's highest battle power is 10-star battle power, no 10-star battle power has ever appeared in Elysium. Therefore, the latter part is only my own speculation. At that time, I didn't think too much about it. Because I was too bored, I popularized the star battle power system. It seems to have been popularized in Yuan Emperor's era. Hearing these words, Yi Chun smiled bitterly. It turned out that the so-called star battle power system was only something the temple spirit came up with out of boredom. However, this star battle power system was indeed useful in Elysium. The temple spirit had existed since ancient times. It had created something based on the strength of countless people, so it was impossible for it not to be perfect. At the very least, it was perfect from 1 star to 7 or 8-star battle power. What is the real cultivation method? Yi Chen asked again. Life and death 9th layer. The temple spirit uttered a new term. In the outside world, because there are too many races and abilities, it's impossible to classify one's battle prowess. Therefore, one's strength is still judged by realm, at least on the surface. 9 layers of life and death realm is the universal cultivation method. Although high realm doesn't necessarily mean high battle prowess, one can at least know how high one's foundation is. If one reaches the first layer, the recovery speed of Zhen Yuan will increase by 10 times. You won't need to go into seclusion for a few months to recover Zhen Yuan, and you won't need to waste a lot of treasures either. In this way, you can use the treasures to increase your realm. Then, which layer of life and death realm am I? You haven't even reached the first layer. If I don't tell you the real cultivation method, you might be able to reach the first layer of life and death realm by chance. But you will never be able to reach the next realm. Not even at the first layer? Elysium is so weak. Yichen didn't think that others had reached the first layer. The temple spirit was speechless. Didn't I tell you? Although you haven't reached the first layer, in my opinion, you're already equivalent to the third layer in the outside world. After all, your willpower and martial skills are very high, and your sword Dao has even reached the level of no sword in hand and no sword in heart. As for the invasion of the alien races, you will be suppressed by the rules of Elysium, and your realm will drop by at least 2 layers. The stronger you are, the greater the suppression. Otherwise, any 6th layer life and death realm warrior would be enough to kill all the kings of Elysium. That's true. Yi Chun was equivalent to the 3rd layer of life and death realm in the outside world, and those 6 star kings should be equivalent to the 4th layer. A 5th layer might not be able to kill all the kings, but a 6th layer would be more or less enough. Alright, since you have the real cultivation method of life and death realm, why don't you pass it down? Don't you want to see Elysium become powerful and defend against the alien races? Yi Chun said. The temple spirit explained, You think I don't want to? The reason why I don't pass it down is because not everyone in Elysium can cultivate to the first layer. Let me tell you, if you want to cultivate to the first layer in Elysium, unless you are a peerless genius, you will turn into ashes at any time. Only outside Elysium can you increase your realm limitlessly, because there are complete rules there. Your lifespan will also increase to 100,000 years. Since ancient times, people could freely enter Elysium without any restrictions. Later on, when the entrance of Elysium was sealed, I had to pass it down to one person after many years. They were all invincible existences in their era. For example, Yuan Emperor had cultivated to the peak of the 2nd layer of life and death realm. Unfortunately, no matter how much he cultivated, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't turn into ashes. Moreover, the further he cultivated, the harder it was to improve. If he didn't leave Elysium, he would never be able to cultivate to the peak. Otherwise, Yuan Emperor's achievements would be far greater. Are you sure I can cultivate to the first layer? Of course. How could my vision be wrong? Originally, even if you couldn't defeat Sword King, I would have passed it down to you after some time. The temple spirit said. Moreover, your current accumulation of cultivation base is already sufficient to reach the first layer, or even the peak of the first layer. Alright, since you've defeated Sword King, this Sword King title belongs to you. The temple spirit waved its small hand, and another row of words appeared behind the last title, Sword King Yi Chun. Dang! Dang! A melodious bell sound spread out from inside the conferring king palace. Ordinary people couldn't hear it, but all the life and death kings heard it. Many kings rushed over, wanting to see who had obtained the new title. In the past year, only a few had entered life and death realm, and Yi Chun was one of them. On the plaza of the conferring king palace, a conferring king pillar's phantom had appeared out of nowhere, with the word Sword King Yi Chun engraved on it. Sword King Yi Chun, the first life and death king, opened his eyes wide in disbelief. He actually obtained the title of Sword King. More and more people rushed over, and there was no lack of peak kings among them. Although Sword King was not a monarch title, for modern people, the weight of Sword King's title was much higher than that of monarchs. This was because it was a supreme title, the apex of sword artists. Without becoming Sword King, one would never be able to become Sword Emperor. They could only be like Blue Cloud, Sword Emperor, and Snowflake Sword Emperor, with some other titles in front. Apart from this, in the future, if others wanted to obtain the title of Sword King, they would no longer have to challenge the ancient Sword King, but Yi Chun. What kind of glory and glory was this? He did it. On the plaza, a faint smile appeared on Xuanho's face. Sword King Yi Chun's name shone brightly, representing the beginning of a new era. The kings present all had their emotions fluctuate, unable to calm down for a long time. Chapter 984. Inside the titled King Palace, the palace spirits said, "Before you leave the true spirit world, you must remember not to raise your cultivation beyond the second layer of life and death realm. For others, it might be a small price to pay, but for you, the price might be your life." Yi Chun knows this. Yi Chun faintly nodded. He was already very satisfied with cultivating to the first layer of life and death realm. If the palace spirit didn't tell him the true cultivation method, he would be like others, raising his cultivation base like a fool, and then starting from the aspect of martial skills. It should be known that the kings of Elysium were not fools. What they lacked was not martial skills, but the true cultivation method. In fact, in terms of martial skills, they might not be weaker than third or fourth layer outsiders. For example, according to the palace spirit, Yi Chun's current battle strength was already equivalent to the third layer outside, and this was under the condition that his cultivation base hadn't reached the first layer. This meant that Yi Chun's martial realm had far surpassed the third layer outside. The true cultivation method of life and death realm is to condense a Dao gate in your Dantian. What is a Dao gate? It is the Dao you walk. If you cultivate Sword Dao, the gate you condense is the Sword Dao gate. If you cultivate Blade Dao, the gate you condense is the Blade Dao gate. Regardless of whether it's the Sword Dao gate or the Blade Dao gate, there isn't much difference on the surface. It's only determined by the nature of your cultivation method. For example, if you cultivate an ordinary martial Dao with the Earth attribute, the gate you condense will be Earth and Yellow. The shape of the Dao gate is the same, and the effect of raising one's realm is also the same. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, and white. At the first layer of life and death realm, the Dao gate will blossom with a red halo. At the second layer, an orange halo will appear outside the red halo. At the ninth layer, the Dao gate will blossom with 9 layers of white halo. Now, I will teach you the method to condense the Dao gate. As long as you condense the Dao gate, raising your realm in the future will be the same as before. Let nature take its course, and there will be no detours. As the hall spirit spoke, its figure flashed. Before Yi Chun could react, it floated in front of Yi Chun and pointed a finger at the spot between Yi Chun's eyebrows. In the next moment, the method to condense the Dao gate automatically entered Yi Chun's mind. This is the method to condense the Dao gate. Yi Chun felt as if he had arrived in another world. All right, you can form the Dao gate in the King Conferment Hall. This should not take more than a month. If there are any mistakes, I can still correct them. Condensing the Dao gate was very crucial, so the hall spirit was a little worried. All right. Yi Chun sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. He wasn't in a rush to condense the Dao gate. Instead, he memorized the method to condense the Dao gate word by word. Seeing this, the hall spirit nodded. Being cautious at all times was very rare. Condensing the Dao gate was very mysterious. This was because the Dantian wasn't any other place. It was the sea of true yuan. If anything was casually created in the Dantian, it would be destroyed by true yuan and turned back into true yuan. The Dao gate was eternal. If it was destroyed by true yuan, it wouldn't be called the Dao gate anymore. Therefore, the structure of the Dao gate was very complicated. It was like diamond and carbon. One was heaven and the other was earth. In the end, they were just two forms of the same element. The Dao gate was like a diamond, and true yuan was carbon. Although the former was condensed from true yuan, its form had changed. Almost there. 2 hours passed. Yi Chun already had a deep understanding of the method to condense the Dao gate. All he lacked was practice. Gurgle. In the Dantian, true yuan boiled, and something appeared in the middle. It was a shard. The shard gave off a bright light. It looked like a true yuan crystal, but it was purer and tougher. The shard became bigger and bigger. When it became dozens of times bigger, it collapsed and was destroyed by true yuan. It turned back into a part of true yuan and no longer existed. It seems like I should condense the Tao Gate image first. Yi Chen thought. This time, a blurry door appeared in the Dantian. This was the Tao Gate image. The moment the Tao Gate image appeared, although it was on the verge of collapsing from the true yuan, it didn't collapse. With the Tao Gate image as the foundation, Yi Chen slowly condensed a bright shard. It was the same method as before, but there was one more step. However, he still failed in the end. The speed of condensing the Tao Gate is too slow. The Tao Gate image can't last that long. Do I have to do it step by step? I don't rush to condense the Tao Gate, but slowly transform it from carbon to diamond. Yi Chen continued to condense the Tao Gate and immersed himself in it. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Yi Chen was still sitting there cross-legged. In his Dantian, the Tao Gate image became more and more solid. Every once in a while, there would be a change. Although the change was not big, it had not been destroyed by true yuan yet. Fortunately, I'm on the right track. On the king's conferring pillar, the hall spirits saw everything. Even the Tao Gate image in the depths of Yi Chen's Dantian did not escape his eyes. The higher the rank of the cultivation method, the harder it is to condense the Tao Gate. But, correspondingly, the condensed Tao Gate is extremely firm. It won't break easily and cause a drop in cultivation. Life and Death realm was an extremely peculiar realm. It had high requirements for cultivation methods. Although condensing the Tao Gate was extremely difficult, the foundation was firm. If the cultivation method's rank was low, the condensed Tao Gate would not be firm enough. Breaking through to the second or third layer might not be a problem, but once one tried to break through to the higher realms, it would be extremely easy to fail, causing the Tao Gate to break and causing a drop in cultivation. In the ancient era, it was not like no one's cultivation had dropped. Some people with poor foundation even dropped from the third layer to the first layer. The Tao Gate would then be completely damaged and would need to be condensed again. Yi Chen's cultivation method was mid-heaven grade, so his foundation could be considered very firm. Even if he didn't make any progress in the future, he would still be able to reach the fourth layer. Without the Tao Gate being damaged, he would even have a high chance of breaking through to the fifth layer. Another week passed, and it had already been 10 days since Yi Chen condensed the Tao Gate. On this day, the Tao Gate in Yi Chen's Dantian was completely formed. It looked like a cyan diamond gate, hard, beautiful, and filled with a sharp aura. The moment the Tao Gate was formed, a scarlet halo suddenly blossomed like a protective cover, protecting the Tao Gate. At the same time, this cyan diamond gate seemed to have become a channel in the Dantian. A large amount of Zhen Yuan passed through the Tao Gate, and when it came out, the quality of the Zhen Yuan had increased by a large margin. First layer of Life and Death realm completed. Chapter 985. Reaching the first layer of Life and Death realm makes a huge difference. It had been a long time since Yi Chen had felt a huge increase in his basic strength. Previously, although his cultivation base had advanced by leaps and bounds, reaching the level of 1,000 years, it was only an increase in quantity. Unless it was several hundred years or 1,000 years, he wouldn't feel anything, and the increase in strength wouldn't be obvious. But now, Yi Chen could clearly feel that his strength had increased by a large margin. Compared to painstakingly studying martial arts for a few months, it was undoubtedly much easier. Of course, Yi Chen also knew that this was the result of accumulating strength. If he had just entered Life and Death realm, even if Yi Chen didn't have to worry about being annihilated, he wouldn't have had the foundation to cultivate to the first layer. After all the Zhen Yuan had been converted into a pure Zhen Yuan, the interior of the Tao Gate suddenly produced a powerful suction force. As soon as this suction force appeared, the outside world underwent a huge change. With Yi Chen as the center, boundless Yuan Qi of heaven and earth converged toward Yi Chen. At first glance, it looked like a nebula, and Yi-chan was the core of the nebula, unceasingly devouring it. Tisk, you've reached the first layer of life and death realm so quickly, worthy of being the Sword Dao genius who defeated the Sword King. The palace spirit waved its hand, and as if the restriction of the palace had been released, even more yuan qi of heaven and earth poured in, joining the nebula and rapidly strengthening it. After an unknown amount of time, when a nebula was completely devoured, Yi-chen's aura gradually stabilized. At the same time, a boundless might burst out from Yi-chen's body. Peak of the first layer of life and death realm. Yi-chen opened his eyes, his gaze like lightning. After reaching the peak of the first sky of life and death realm, Yi-chen shockingly discovered that his Zhen Yuan cultivation base had already reached the 2,000-year level. In other words, this breakthrough had directly increased his cultivation base by 900 years. Why would he need to spend supreme grade spirit stones, or Zhen Yuan crystals, to increase his cultivation base? He could directly increase his realm. Just as I had guessed, because of your martial arts rank and mental state, you were able to reach the peak of the first sky of life and death realm right away. If your cultivation base was a bit higher, you might even be able to break through to the second sky of life and death realm. However, it is also a good thing to increase your cultivation base slowly. It will help you build a solid foundation for your martial art. Dao sects also needed the nourishment of true essence. Continuous breakthroughs would put too much pressure on Dao sects. Many people would rather raise their cultivation realm slowly than risk breaking through. Thanks a lot. Although the temple spirit looked like a child, Yi-chen did not dare to neglect it. He cupped his fists at it to show his gratitude. No need to thank me. Remember, don't leak the condensing method of this martial art. If something happens, you'll regret it. Back in the day, the condensing method was accidentally leaked, and countless life and death kings fell. It took many years for Elysium to recover. The temple spirit reminded Yi-chen. Yi-chen will not joke around with Elysium's future. You can rest assured. Yi-chen nodded. All right, let's go. The temple spirit waved its hand. Walking out of the titled King Palace, the door behind them closed. Perhaps it was Yi-chen's misperception, but the moment he walked out of the titled King Palace, Yi-chen felt the Dao gate in his body suddenly become unstable. A string of sparks appeared on its surface, and a dark flame appeared. Could it be related to condensing the Dao gate? Yi-chen looked pensive. The news of Yi-chen obtaining the title of Sword King had already spread in the circle of life and death kings. However, only a few people under life and death realm knew about it. Returning to the Yi family, there was one thing that needed to be done, and that was to establish a sect. As early as half a month ago, the Eternal Sky sect had already arrived at True Spirit Continent and were currently residing on one of the peaks of the Yi family. Chun, are you really going to establish a sword sect now? Yi Tianhao was somewhat worried. Yi-chen smiled and said, Father, I'm not establishing a sword sect now. I'm going to establish the Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Fallen Dust Sword Sect? Didn't you want to establish a sword sect before? Yi Tianhao let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he asked curiously. That was my idea before, but after coming out of the titled King Palace, my attitude has changed. Establishing a sword sect could indeed make the sword sect and Yi-chen famous in the world, but there would be endless troubles. When he was here, perhaps no one would dare to mess with the sword sect, but after he left, the sword sect would undoubtedly become a thorn in the eyes of many other sword sects. No one would be happy to see such a huge mountain on top of their heads. They would definitely think of ways to make the sword sect decline, or even destroy it. If a sword sect wanted to be powerful for a long time, other than having powerful strength, it would also need to hide its strength and bide its time. It could not be too stubborn, or else it would be easy to break. This was an unchanging truth. Besides, this was also related to the change in Yi-chen's vision. He never thought that he would not be able to walk out of Elysium. When he walked out of Elysium, he would no longer have to face the powerful warriors of Elysium, but the powerful warriors of countless worlds. Establishing a sword sect would not be worth mentioning at all. There was no need to make everyone unhappy. Have you heard? Yi Chan is going to establish a sword sect. What's the name? I heard it's called Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Fortunately, I thought he was going to establish a sword sect. In the Sky Sword Continent, the news of Yi Chun establishing the Fallen Dust Sword Sect had spread like wildfire. Almost all the Life and Death Kings knew about it, and they all seemed to be very concerned. Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Yi Chun, I owe you a favor. Hearing the news, the Blue Cloud Sword Emperor revealed a faint smile. If he were in Yi Chun's shoes, he would certainly have the intention of establishing a sword sect, and would most likely put it into action. With strength and status, establishing a sword sect would be perfectly justifiable, and there would be no need to be afraid of anyone. However, he had never expected that Yi Chun would not establish a sword sect, but the Fallen Dust Sword Sect. In this way, there would not be any suppression. Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Good name. On the same day, the Snowflake Sword Emperor also received the news. On the Spirit Cloud Peak, the sounds of weapons clashing could be heard continuously. One moment, it was like a storm, and the next moment, it was like a stream. Only when he got closer did he realize that it was a fight between two youths. Of these two youths, one was dressed in black with a cold expression, while the other was dressed in white. His appearance was ordinary, but his eyes were gentle. Although the two of them were dressed differently, and their appearances were vastly different, both of them had a sword embroidered on their sleeves. It could be seen that the cold-looking youth's swordsmanship was extremely sharp. Each of his moves was filled with killing intent. The most shocking thing was that his swordsmanship contained a faint trace of sword intent. It was precisely because of the existence of this trace of sword intent that his swordsmanship was exceptionally sharp. Even from afar, one could feel the coldness on one's skin. Compared to the grave and stern youngster, the sword arts of the white-robed youngster were not as sharp as the grave and stern youngsters. Neither had he comprehended sword intent. Their cultivation bases were more or less the same. However, no matter how the grave and stern youngster attacked, he could not break through the latter's sword aura. His sword aura was like a spring breeze, but also like a fine drizzle. Upon closer inspection, it did not seem like a spring breeze, nor was it a fine drizzle, but rather a gentle sunlight and the fragrance of plants. The sword arts of the grave and stern youngster filled with killing intent seemed to be entangled by countless fine threads. They became slower and slower, losing their destructive power and dissolving into nothingness. On the side, two young men and two young girls were watching the battle. Although Long Xinghan had only become a disciple of Big Brother half a year ago, I have to admit that his sword arts talent is a bit better than mine. He has comprehended sword intent so early, and has pushed the lone peak of 13 swords to this level. Yin Jianhui, I am afraid that even you would not be able to compete with Long Xinghan. Yi Xin looked at Yin Jianhui. Yin Jianhui was watching the battle seriously. Hearing this, he opened his mouth and said, "It does not matter if I am able to compete with fourth brother or not. What is important is that you were not able to compete with me 3 months ago. But you can only beat me by 1 or 2 moves at most. Don't make it sound like you are suppressing me." Although Yi Xin said that, he was very depressed in his heart. There was always someone better than him. His sword arts talent was indeed very good, and his big brother was quite satisfied with him. But compared to Yin Jianhui, even if he did not want to admit it, he knew that he was not as good as Yin Jianhui. In the beginning, he could beat Yin Jianhui with only a few moves, but as time went on, Yin Jianhui grew at an amazing speed and caught up with him. Yin Jianhui was not that bad. After all, there was only one of him. But what made him lose confidence was the 3 new disciples of his big brother, one more powerful than the other. The second disciple was the young man in white, named Dongfang Bai. In other aspects, he was about the same as Yin Jianhui, but in terms of sword arts comprehension, he was even better than Yin Jianhui. His big brother had said that his achievements in sword arts were about the same as Dongfang Bai. As for the third disciple, it was Huang Sumei, who often hung out with his sister, Yi Xiaoxiao. She was 1 year younger than him and was his big brother's only female disciple. She was also very talented and smart. She could infer many things from one instance, and was the smartest of his big brother's disciples. And just half a year ago, his big brother took in another fourth disciple, named Lung Xinghan. He was the young man in black who was evenly matched with Dongfang Bai. This Lung Xinghan's talent was extremely outstanding, and he was at the peak in all aspects. Not only did he comprehend sword intent, his comprehension of sword arts was not inferior to Dongfang Bai's. In terms of monstrous talent, he was almost the #1 disciple of his big brother. Junior brother Lung is still a little lacking. I think he will lose to second senior brother in 10 moves. Huang Sumei's face was like a peach blossom. She was already quite charming at such a young age. Ding ding dang dang. After 9 moves, just as Huang Sumei said, Lung Xinghan lost. Not bad. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Big brother. Master. Yi Xian and Yi Xiaoxiao quickly turned their heads and called him big brother. The others also called him master, including the cold-looking Lung Xinghan. Touching Yi Xian's head, Yi Chen gave him an encouraging look and then looked at Dongfang Bai and Lung Xinghan. The two of you have made obvious progress. Xiao Bai, you have a strong understanding of sword arts, but sword arts are used to kill people. Blindly dispelling them is not the right way. Xinghan, you have comprehended the sword intent, but don't think that you can defeat Xiao Bai with sword intent. A swordsman's greatest strength is not how powerful his sword art is or how strong his sword intent is, but how he uses it. You haven't reached the limit in using the sword intent, and you haven't completely transformed it into battle strength. Master is right. Dongfang Bai quickly lowered his head. Lung Xinghan also listened attentively, turning his head to look at Yin Jianhui and Huang Sumei. A faint smile appeared on his face. It had already been a year since he had founded the Falling Dust Sword sect. During this time, he had taken in 3 new disciples, all of whom were from the Sky Sword continent. First disciple, Yin Jianhui. Second disciple, Dongfang Bai. Third disciple, Huang Sumei. Fourth disciple, Lung Xinghan. Among them, the first disciple, Yin Jianhui, had the most spiritual qi. The second disciple, Dongfang Bai, had a strong understanding of sword arts. The third disciple, Huang Sumei, was exceptionally intelligent and had an exquisite heart. Fourth disciple, Lung Xinghan, was the most monstrous one. He was the best in every aspect. Chapter 986. Master, I'm going to spar with junior brother Lung. Can you give me some pointers? Yi Chen's arrival made Huang Sumei's eyes brighten. Hearing this, Lung Xinghan curled his lips. If you want to spar, spar with senior brother or second brother. Don't drag me into it. Yi Chen faintly smiled. You're too smart for your own good. It's better to spend more time on comprehending sword arts. In the past half a year, your improvement isn't too obvious. Although you won't be at the bottom with your intelligence, it's only temporary. As time goes on, you'll slowly fall behind him. How could Yi Chen not see that his disciple worshipped him very much? Master, I'll try my best. Huang Sumei blinked her eyes and carefully looked at Yi Chen. She, Huang Sumei, was a person who thought highly of herself. In Gale region of Sky Sword continent, she was a peak sword genius. It should be known that more than 90% of the people in Sky Sword continent trained in sword arts. Being able to stand out among them was already extremely difficult, not to mention reaching the peak. Many people believe that her figure would inevitably appear in the 10 swords of Sky Sword continent in the future. As for the current 10 swords of Sky Sword continent, Huang Sumei admired them, but not worshipped them. She was confident that she could also reach this level. However, after hearing about Yi Chen's achievements, she felt a subtle sense of worship for the first time. This couldn't be blamed on her. Yi Chen's growth path was too shocking, surpassing the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. Within the same generation, he was unrivaled. Especially after Yi Chen obtained the title of Sword King, Huang Sumei knew that be it in the past or present, no sword artist could surpass Yi Chen. If the ancient Sword King was a legend among sword artists in the past, then Yi Chen was a new legend among sword artists. When a new legend appeared, others could only look up to him. This was a legendary sword artist who had never been defeated, and she was fortunate enough to become his disciple and listen to his teachings. Moving his gaze away from Huang Sume, Yi Chan said, "The four of you all have a great chance of reaching life and death realm. However, life and death realm is not the end, but a new starting point. Before that, you need to build a good foundation. Only with a strong foundation will you have more potential to break through." As someone who had been through it, Yi Chan was naturally clear about the effect of the foundation. Although it would not be able to turn into battle power in a short period of time, it would still affect you in the long run. It was the reason for having a deep foundation. Xing Han, you have already comprehended the sword intent. You can go to the Valley of Sword Intent to comprehend the sword intent at any time, but you must not be greedy and advance rashly. With that, Yi Chun said to Lung Xing Han, "Yes, master." Even the cold-blooded Lung Xing Han could not help but reveal a surprised expression after hearing Yi Chen's words. The Valley of Sword Intent was created by his master with one sword strike. It contained an extremely powerful immortal sword intent, which was extremely beneficial for comprehending the sword intent. His master had also said that the reason why he could have his current achievements was because he had comprehended the sword intent in the natural moat gorge. The sword intent in the gorge was also the immortal sword intent. Lung Xinghan was pleasantly surprised while the others were envious. The basic requirement to comprehend the sword intent in the Valley of Sword Intent was to have already comprehended the sword intent. Without the sword intent, one would not be qualified to go. Seeing everyone's expression, Yi Chen smiled and said, "The Valley of Sword Intent will not run away from there. Once you have comprehended the sword intent, you can all go." In the past year, Yi Chun had already raised the immortal sword intent to the 6th rank. Just like the destruction sword intent, the two sword intents were at the same level. He had once again achieved the sword intent resonance and the sword soul resonance. His improvement speed was gradually increasing, and he believed that in the near future, both of them would definitely break through to the 7th rank. The Valley of Sword Intent, created by the 6th rank Immortal Sword Intent, would not dissipate and could exist for at least 500 years, just like the natural moat gorge created by the Battle Emperor. Suddenly, Yi Chen frowned. "Big brother, what's wrong?" Yi Xian asked. Yi Chen waved his hand. "You guys continue to practice." With that, he took a step into the void. "Senior Yuan Emperor, are you saying that the seal of the true water palace is loosened?" In the void, Yi Chen opened the high view painting and summoned Yuan Emperor's clone. Yuan Emperor said, "True Water Emperor was a titled monarch before me. Just like you and me, he had condensed the Tao Gate and cultivated to the 2nd layer of life and death realm. However, the True Water Palace was destroyed 15,000 years ago, and True Water Emperor disappeared 25,000 years ago. He suddenly reappeared in the year of destruction. I suspect that the destruction of the True Water Palace is related to him. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him." Yuan Emperor was the last titled monarch who had left his mark on the Emperor's Scar Steel. Before him, no titled monarch had appeared in the past 10,000 years. Clearly, there was a gap of 10,000 years between him and True Water Emperor. However, after hearing Yuan Emperor's words, Yi Chun realized that in Yuan Emperor's era, True Water Emperor was still alive and had returned. Could it be that he had crossed the path of death and lived for 100,000 years? But how could the destruction of the True Water Palace be explained? One question after another filled Yi Chen's mind. When the True Water Palace was destroyed, I and the other monarchs went to investigate, but we didn't find anything. Just in case, I joined hands with the other monarchs and sealed the ruins of the True Water Palace, leaving behind a spirit accumulation scroll with my clone sealed inside. Later on, you obtained the scroll. According to what you said later, mysterious Yin King came back to life and turned into another life form. I guess that there should be a huge seal inside the ruins, an extremely frightening seal. It was precisely this seal that caused the destruction of the True Water Palace and the truth to be concealed. Yuan Emperor said word by word. Feeling that the matter was thorny, Yi Chun said, "I promised Senior that I would solve the crisis inside the ruins. Since the seal is starting to loosen, it's time to fulfill my promise." Yuan Emperor said, You must be extremely careful on this trip to the true water palace. Moreover, I don't feel comfortable letting you go alone. That Yin Xian is not as strong as you, but her methods are very mysterious. She might be able to turn the situation around at the crucial moment. You can bring her with you. Senior Xianhou? To be honest, Yi Chun did not want to bring danger to others. He had a feeling that the danger inside the true water palace was definitely very frightening. How could Yuan Emperor not know what Yi Chun was thinking? He said, the seal hasn't been broken yet, so it's the easiest time to solve it. If the seal is broken, it will be a great calamity for the alien races. If you go alone, it's very likely that you won't be able to solve this crisis. Without experiencing the alien race's calamity, you don't know how difficult it is to kill some of the alien race's experts. You might be able to defeat them, but to kill them is as difficult as reaching the heavens. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many seals existing since the ancient times. If you could kill them, why bother sealing them? There will be endless troubles in the future. Once you lose the chance and let them escape, the consequences will be unimaginable. Senior, are you saying that the true water palace is actually sealing the alien race's experts? Most likely. Can I invite other kings of Elysium? After asking, Yi Chun suddenly felt that something was wrong. Yuan Emperor shook his head. It's better not to alert them. Otherwise, there will be too many variables, and the war might break out earlier. What you lack now is time. Senior, you are right. Making up his mind, Yi Chun went to Xian sect in Sky Martial region on the same day. The true water palace. Xianhou frowned. I've heard of the strange rumors about the true water emperor, but I didn't expect it to be true. But it's not safe with just you and me. It's better to invite the demon flower emperor. Her demon flower can absorb any kind of energy and suppress the enemy's power. This way, we will have more confidence in solving this crisis. In the rich light ocean span on the desolate sea, the demonic flower emperor's expression was grave as he said, back then, the Flash Demon King told me about this place, and I went in as well. The mysterious Yin King, who came back to life, was already killed by me. The Flash Demon King was the human demon king who had chased after Yi Chun. Like Yi Chun, he had also entered the true water palace. Later, he was injured by the resurrected mysterious evil king, and only recovered after a long time. Therefore, the demon flower emperor entering the true water palace didn't make Yi Chun feel strange. But the demonic flower emperor's tone changed. The mysterious Yin King's strength was at most at the level of a mid-stage king. With my strength, killing him should have been easy. However, the evil and powerful Yin Qi on his body made him extremely hard to kill. As long as the Yin Qi was not extinguished, he would be able to return to his peak. I used the demonic flower to completely absorb his Yin Qi before finally killing him. Xianhou said, the Yin Qi is not extinguished. This is a trick of the evil spirit race. You have to be careful this time. The evil spirit race was a foreign race that had invaded Elysium. Although it was not as threatening as the demons to Elysium, it was not to be underestimated either. Seniors, let's go down. Yi Chun opened the silver vertical eye on his forehead. As far as his eyes could see, the true water palace was still there. Compared to many years ago, the ominous Qi inside the true water palace had become even denser. If an ordinary person were to come here, they would probably turn into a lunatic on the spot. Even Sea of Soul Realm experts might suddenly die upon being infected by this ominous Qi, or even suffer a cultivation deviation during cultivation. Such a horrifying, evil Qi. It was Xuanhou's first time coming here. Just like the Demon Flower Emperor had said, the inside of the tower was completely empty. The mysterious evil king was no longer there. Using his soul eye, Yi Chun soon found the second tower. On the top of this tower, there were 3 words, Black Smoke Tower. It is the Black Smoke King of the 13 kings of the True Water Palace. When they reached the top floor of the Black Smoke Tower, before the 3 of them even entered, a thick black smoke blew towards them. This black smoke was cold and evil, and it was filled with resentment and baleful aura. Under the impact of this black smoke, the ground and walls were covered in ice. The black smoke seemed to be solid, and it occasionally turned into the image of a struggling ghost face. Pung! The lid of the coffin opened, and a twisted black human figure jumped out. Chapter 987. Huh! Demon Flower Emperor roared and formed a seal with both of her hands. A black demonic flower quietly blossomed and swallowed the twisting shadow before suddenly closing up. Pung, 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 pung. The closed demonic flower bulged unceasingly. The twisting shadow was most likely the resurrected Black Smoke King. After all, he was a life and death king when he was alive. After being enveloped by the demonic flower, it was impossible for him to not have the slightest bit of resistance. Especially the dense evil power. It actually increased his survivability, surpassing his previous life. Unfortunately, he was facing the Demon Flower Emperor. Demon Flower Emperor's demonic flower could absorb any form of energy, even the evil power. In terms of evil, demons were not inferior to evil spirit race. In terms of darkness, demons were even above evil spirit race. Being enveloped by the demonic flower, there was no way he could make a comeback. The frequency of the bulging of the demonic flower became lower and lower. On the other hand, the demonic ripples emitted by the demonic flower became more and more powerful. The result could be easily imagined. Ding! When there was no movement inside the demonic flower, a pair of claws filled with sinister, evil chi shot out and landed on the ground. Unfortunately, this extreme-grade artifact has already turned into an evil weapon. Shinho shook her head, feeling a bit regretful. This evil weapon can be used by my clansmen. I'll take it. The evil power on the claws had been mostly absorbed by the demonic flower. As for the remaining evil power, it should be fine as long as demonic power was used to cleanse it. Of course, the evil power on the claws had long since fused with the claw's origin. Demon Flower Emperor had absorbed the majority of the evil power, making the claw's might inferior to the majority of extreme-grade artifacts. It was barely stronger than a pseudo-extreme-grade artifact, but it was already enough. Many life and death kings didn't even have a pseudo-extreme-grade artifact. Leaving the Black Smoke Tower, the three entered the third tower. Inside the third tower was the resurrected Rainstorm King. Rainstorm King's strength was a lot stronger than the Black Smoke King's, and he probably had the strength of a peak mid-step king. However, as soon as he appeared, 99% of his Inchi power was destroyed by Yi Chun with a single sword attack. The second sword attack turned him into ashes. Yi Chun, who had the six-step destruction sword intent, was also the nemesis of these evil powers, and was even purer than the Demon Flower Emperor. The Demon Flower Emperor absorbed their power, while Yi Chun destroyed their power. Unknowingly, the three of them had eliminated the 9 monarchs and arrived at the 11th tower. That Blood Refinement King's strength is already not inferior to the yellow-robed old monster that you killed. Adding on his inextinguishable In Chi, he can contend against an existence that is twice as strong as the yellow-robed old monster. These 13 kings of the true Water Palace are each stronger than the last. I wonder how strong the next Golden Bone King will be. The Blood Refinement Monarch was a monarch of the 10th tower. His strength was comparable to the current monarchs. Even the Devil Flower Empress couldn't completely absorb the evil energy of the Demonic Flower Empress in one go. After all, in a situation where the difference in strength wasn't too great, the Demonic Flower Empress wouldn't allow the Devil Flower Empress to absorb his energy. It was just like how the Devil Flower Empress couldn't do anything to the Zhan Tianxiang Emperor, even though the Zhan Tianxiang Emperor was much stronger than the Blood Refinement Monarch. When they arrived at the top of the Golden Bone Tower, the three's expression changed slightly. At this time, the Golden Bone King was no longer a living being, but a dark golden skeleton with a cold white flame burning in its eye sockets. Waves of evil soul power attacked the three. In terms of evil power, it was more than twice as strong as the Blood Refinement King. 8 trigrams extermination. Yi Chen didn't hesitate. The Sky Scorpio sword floated above his head and divided into 8, then 64. The 64 sword images combined into an 8 trigrams sword array. As soon as the 8 trigrams sword array took shape, A frightening extermination aura covered the sky. Under the amplification of the destruction sword intent, it reached an unprecedented level. During the battle with the Sword King in the titled King Palace, Yichen had comprehended the state of no sword in the hand and no sword in the heart, greatly increasing the strength of his soul. This meant that the might of his sword control art had also greatly increased. Moreover, he had also cultivated to the peak of the first layer of life and death realm, greatly increasing the purity of his Zhen Yuan. With the combination of the two, the current 8 trigrams extermination sword art was countless times more powerful than the original 8 trigrams extermination sword art. Puff! Before the Golden Bone King could make a move, the 8 trigrams sword array swept across his body. Like a candle being blown out, the Golden Bone King's body instantly turned into dense Yin-Chi. This Yin-Chi was torn apart by the 8 trigram sword array and was immediately extinguished by the sword Chi as if it had never existed. How did your sword control arts might increase so much? Demon Flower Emperor asked in a strange tone. Yichen thought for a moment and honestly said, "My soul's strength has increased a bit. Moreover, I've obtained the true cultivation method of life and death realm, raising my cultivation base to the peak of the first layer of life and death realm." True cultivation method, the peak of the first layer of life and death realm. Not only Demon Flower Emperor, but Xianhou also curiously looked over. Yichen knew that he had to explain to the two. Purely accumulating cultivation base is not true cultivation. In life and death realm, there are also realms divided into 9 layers of life and death realm. To step into the first layer of life and death realm, one must condense one's own Dao gate in one's Dantian. With the Dao gate as the foundation, one can raise one's realm level by level. However, the laws of Elysium are somewhat incomplete, not as complete as the outside world. Therefore, the true cultivation method has not been leaked. Otherwise, forcibly condensing a Dao gate would cause the backlash of Elysium's laws, causing the Dao gate to instantly collapse and turn into ashes. But how did you do it? Demon Flower Emperor wanted to ask how Yi Chun could cultivate to the first layer of life and death realm. Yi Chun bitterly smiled. After I defeated the Sword King's consciousness body, the palace spirit told me the true cultivation method. However, he warned me not to impart it to others, lest many life and death kings fall and harm the true spirit continent's Yuan Qi. So that's how it is. Demon Flower Emperor and Xianhou looked pensive. I didn't expect life and death realm to have 9 layers. If one can cultivate to the 9th layer and refine Jin Yuan 9 times, as long as one's martial skills are not too bad, one can easily surpass 10-star battle strength. Xianhou sighed. Yichen nodded. Xianhou was right. Yuan Emperor was only at the peak of the 2nd layer, but he already had a peak 7-star battle strength. If he could raise his realm to the 9th layer, surpassing 10 stars would be a piece of cake. He wouldn't even need to reach the 9th layer. He could even surpass the 8th layer. Of course, this was mainly because Yuan Emperor's martial skills were too powerful, and his martial will was also powerful. Even if he was only at the peak of the 2nd layer, he would be able to contend against a 5th layer life and death realm expert. Although life and death realm experts were suppressed too much by Elysium, not only would their realms be suppressed, but their bodies would also be injured. For a 7th layer life and death realm expert, apart from being suppressed by 2 layers, it was enough to show the might of Yuan Emperor. No, of Elysium's invincible figure of each generation. The 9 layers of life and death realm. The higher one goes, the harder it becomes to cultivate. Apart from having a high rank and a high mental state, one's Dao gate also needs to be nurtured for a long time. None of these are dispensable. If one is not careful, one's Dao gate might be damaged, and one's realm might drop, forcing one to cultivate from the beginning. Although I don't know about the situation outside, I can imagine that there shouldn't be many people who can cultivate to the 9th layer. Breaking through in life and death realm was completely different from breaking through under life and death realm. If one failed to break through under life and death realm, one's realm wouldn't drop. On the other hand, breaking through in life and death realm carried a huge risk. Some people might break through from the 8th layer to the 9th layer, and might even drop 3 or 4 layers. Under such circumstances, the number of people who could reach the peak of life and death realm would be reduced by 99%. It was easy to explain why demons and other peak experts didn't come to Elysium. Having their realm suppressed didn't matter to them, but having their origin damaged was the same as taking their lives. Golden Bone King's weapon was a huge blade emitting an evil chi, which was collected by Yichun. He wanted to forge supreme grade swords in the future, and the more supreme grade materials the better. Although these were evil weapons, they were still of good quality. Breaking them down would give him a lot of supreme grade materials, so it was better to be prepared. With the death of Golden Bone King, there was only one tower left. As for True Water Emperor, he should be at the center of the 12 towers, where the evil power was the strongest. Among the 12 kings under True Water Emperor, Sky Destruction King is the strongest. According to historical records, he's more powerful than the other 11 kings combined. I'll first reverse the environment of Sky Destruction Tower. Xuanho's expression turned grave as her body floated up. In the next moment, an ancient gate appeared above Xuanho's head. This gate rotated once, and an unfathomable power immediately spread out from it. What a marvelous and mysterious way. Demon Flower Emperor's eyes flashed with curiosity. Using his soul power, he sensed that the void around Sky Destruction Tower had been reversed. The powerful evil power seemed to have a hole, and the air inside the ball leaked out in all directions. This place became a different kind of vacuum world. The evil power was getting lesser and lesser, and the essence of heaven and earth was getting more and more. Roar! At this moment, a wave of earth-shattering, baleful energy gushed out from the bottom of the Annihilation Pagoda. Boundless evil energy gushed out, and a distorted figure wrapped in white cloth scuttled out. He grabbed out with his hand, and a white cloth hand the size of a small mountain appeared in the void, grabbing towards the ancient door above Mysterious Queen's head. Extinction. The 8 trigrams sword formation above Yichun's head had already formed, and it attacked at the white hand. Boom! 2 different kinds of extinction power clashed with each other, clashing against each other. Break! Pulling out the iron blood silver-blue sword, Yichun's body flashed. When he appeared again, he was behind a figure wrapped in white cloth, and the figure's body was split into 2. You all deserve to die. All of you deserve to die. I'm not willing. I hate you. The white-clothed figure's inextinguishable chi far surpassed Golden Bone King's. Yichun's frightening sword strike merely destroyed a portion of his power. His severed body fluttered like sand, and the white-clothed figure condensed in another direction. His power didn't seem to have been consumed much. His voice was brimming with resentment, making this place seem even more ominous, like hell itself. 6-star battle power. Yichun's expression turned serious for the first time.